Okay. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to start with the Coca-Cola stuff. And the first one we're going to take a look at is alleys. All right, so this is what I actually got. I'm going to turn off the fill layer here so that I still have the outline that you can see. It's relatively dim here, but you can still sort of see what's going on. So when I look at these to grade them, I come into the profile part, and you can see in this case, Allie had all of her paths were located on this one path layer, for lack of a better way of putting it. Some of you broke it up, which doesn't matter because again, it's always easy to combine them. All you need to do is copy and paste or cut and paste, and you can build them all into a single one. That wasn't really the challenge. The challenge was the quality of the profile. So then to look at it, if you select just the path tool, you can actually sort of see where things look pretty good here, and then maybe a little bit off here. Like you'll see small little issues like this is missing that line right here. So Allie did a really good job when she was first starting this part out, but there are things that can be fine-tuned after the fact. Like this one is a little bit off. And to save you from having to go back in and essentially select a path and then eliminate it and start over from scratch, you can fix things to a certain extent after the fact. So to do that, you want to select not the black path tool, because if you select that, it just selects all of your points, and it doesn't really, you can't go in and select any given point and do anything with it. You can move the whole path, but that's all you can really do with this black-headed selection tool. So instead, you select the white one. And then the white one, you can actually click on things and look to see what's happening, and you can see when I click on this, I'm not sure I'm fairly certain that this control handle right here is actually going to maneuver this line right here. Now you can see that when I selected that point, it stays blue and everybody else goes white. The white dots indicate that they are anchored in space. They will not move. So if I click on this blue dot and yank, it moves it. That's not necessarily what I want to do. That's not helping me in this case. If I hit Command Z to undo that, instead, you can also click on the handle points, because those are in the control handle points. So instead, I'm going to click on this one, and now you'll see that it'll actually click on this. Now I can actually reset this one, and I can bring it down the way it is actually supposed to be. Again, I'm not sure what handle is controlling this one right here, but I believe it's this one right here. Nope, that's the one that's going on the other side. So Command Z that guy, and I'll grab this one instead. And you can see I can get a little bit better. Sometimes I think that this is a little bit too aggressive of a, I would put, if I was doing this, instead of trying to use a single curve to describe this whole arc right here, I would have probably put another point in the middle. It just makes it a little bit simpler to actually do. So anyway, that would just be, but I just want you to realize that you can go in and fine tune these things after the fact. So for instance, if there's another point up in here, I can actually move this up a little bit to reset that and then bring this a little bit more in, pull that down a little bit. So you can do those sorts of things. So just, I wanted to throw that part out here. So that's one. I want to show you Saffron's next. So again, I'm going to turn that off so I can just see the outline by itself. I'm going to click on the path, select the path, and I'm going to zoom into the top. And then you can see there's some parts that look pretty good here. This part looks sort of like clunky. It looks a little bit like straight line sections to me. That's what seems to be going on in here. And if you actually take a look at the points that are sitting up here at the top, you will see that they started to actually, these are all just straight line points that is going around here. So not what you want to do. You want to actually use your points to actually build the curves, to make the curves. However, if you start to then look at the rest, sorry. Okay, sorry. As we start to move down through this, things start to get considerably better. These are all actually the points that we are exactly looking for. A lot of them have single handles on or whatever. So things got considerably better here, which I thought was really, really great. What didn't get considerably better here, though, I want to show you a couple of other things on this. Like this right here. If we take a look at this, this was a point that was never completed. So if I zoom in here to take a look, you will see they get close, but this point was never completed. The path was never completed. So you need to remember when you're doing this stuff, hang on, let me go back in space. When you're doing this stuff, I'm going to actually go ahead and connect this path. So if I go back to the pen tool, the P key, and click on this point right here, it will pick it up, and then I just continue. Remember, you've always got to ultimately see this little icon of a pen with a circle next to it that indicates you're completing the path. And once you do that, then when I go to my selection tools and I pick on this point right here, this time now I've got a completed path that I'm actually moving, not something that's was broken apart. And then finally, more than a number of you did the next one. I'll show you that really quickly and then we'll move on. So in Dustin's, again, I'm going to uncheck this part, but now I've got a problem here. And again, I would say a third of the class did this. So you made your selection, you did the path work, which is great. Then you made your selection, and then when you actually filled that selection, you filled the layer that actually had the outline in it. And I can't see the outline anymore. I can see part of the one right here, but it's a destructive move. There's no way for me to really get back to that. The only way I can get back to this is by actually opening up another image that actually has that part. And then grabbing the layer from this, that actually has the outline on it, drag it on top of Dustin's image, hold down the shift key to bring it in and register, and then I can actually hide the top part, bring this up to the very top. And now I've got the outline again, and I can assess it that way. So don't want to do that part, but because again, that's a destructive move. Everything we need to think about is not doing those destructive moves. So speaking of destructive moves, half of this class at least half of this class applied the layer masks to the body when you were putting it on the metal background. What have I said here? How many times have I said, do not apply your layer masks? And over and over and over and over it happened. And it's just, you are making these destructive moves. You are burying yourself in a way, such a way that you cannot recover from that. And if you do it to an original image and you do not have some copy of that original image somewhere, God forbid you do it on a client's original image and there is no other copy of it, you have destroyed the image and there's no recovering from that. And if you do that for a client, you'll never work for them again. So I don't know who taught who to apply layer masks, but there is simply no advantage to it. There's massive disadvantages, but not one single upside to it. And again, half of you are still doing it. So we're going to take a look at a couple of others. Again, if I show your image right here and I point out that your mask got applied, don't worry, you were certainly not alone. I'm telling you, more than 10 people in this class actually did this. So anyway, we're going to go through a couple of these, and then we're actually going to do something similar to this the correct way. And then I'm also going to show you other tricks about how to think about working with paths so that a lot of these problems ultimately will go away. So I am going to start with Lexi's image right here. So in this one, you will again see that the mask has been applied. So if I hold down my Option key and click on it, there's no way to recover from this. If I go in and take a look at this really closely, you can see anything that is ultimately missing in this, like, oh, all the laces that she was holding are gone. They're not in this image. They're gone. There's no way for me to recover it. I can't go back in and rebuild the mask. There is no mask. It's just been applied. It's gone. Making things worse, if I click on the path palette, the path isn't there anymore. So, and again, at least half of you did this. You moved the figure, I'm sorry, you moved the figure to the metal backgrounds instead of the metal backgrounds to the figure. Why would you do that? You spent all this time making the path and then you just orphaned it. You took the figure and moved it onto the metal background, closed up the image that had the path in it, probably didn't save it, got rid of it, and all that work you put into it is just gone. You can't refine that anymore. You can't change it. You can't amend it. You can't add to it. You can't take away from it. It's simply gone. And that's just no way to work. It forces you, what ends up happening is that you realize that you've done this and you go, fuck, I've got to rebuild the path. How long did it take you guys to do the pen work on this image? That was no 5-minute deal, I know. And yet you threw it away. So one of the tricks was to actually instead move the metal background to the image that still had the path in it. But I'm going to show you other ways because that takes care of some of the problems in here, but certainly not all of the problems. So just wanted to point that part out. So I want to look at Leah's really quickly. Same situation here in the sense that the path got orphaned, but at least in this case, I do have a layer mask that's actually on here. So you can see if I hold down my Shift key and click on it, you can see that the image was there, so that part was actually done correctly. If I zoom way in on this though, and this is what I actually do to look at it. So remember what I told you guys in the very first time when we started using the pen tool is that the pen tool for most cases is too precise. It does a really good a really good job at finding that outline, but then if you do not soften that edge just a little bit, it looks cut out. And so for me, you can actually see, you can find points of it like this, that like this shoulder line right here just looks cut out. If I hold down my Option key and click on this, you can also see that it's it's just too sharp. So for me, the reason that I do the make a selection from the path and then feather it back, so I'll make a selection. Well, here, I'll show you. I'm just going to load this as a selection. So imagine I made that just from a path. Then I would come up to the select menu, down to modify and down to feather. That's one way of actually doing it. But Photoshop has now added in masks, they've actually added a feathering property that's actually in the properties panel for the mask. So I'm going to Command D to deselect. So this is actually a better way of doing it now because in the method that I showed you, the first one where you go up and you actually modify and feather the selection, that's not adjustable. I mean, you can go back and do it over again, but it's just not adjustable. If you do it this way by using the feather control that's in the properties panel of the mask. So remember, if I'm selecting my image, my properties panel deals with the image. But if I select the mask, it actually deals with the mask. And this feather right here will actually soften that edge. So again, if we take a look just at the layer mask, and pull this feather over, you'll actually see it'll actually do the feather here. But this is adjustable. And then if you save your image, the way this is actually set up gets saved with your image as well. So you could go back and change this 15 years from now. And so this is actually the way that I would prefer you to do it. It's the way I'm gonna try to retrain myself to start doing it right now. For me, I've been doing it the other way for so long. It's a very natural thing, and I kind of go on autopilot and I run through those steps. And anyway, I'm doing my best to work on changing that part. I want to show you one more. Can't believe how poorly this was actually done. So Allie's, I don't know where Allie's head was at, but in Allie's case, I'm completely joking with her. This was spot on. So if we take a look at her path, she's got the path part right here. If we go in and look at her layers palette, you'll notice that she actually has the image that has not been, her image is even a smart object, even better, it's protected. She actually has two masks on this, and we're going to talk about what these are right now. One of these is a pixel mask, which you guys are accustomed to using, and that's this black and white one that's right here. The other is actually called a vector mask, and that's the one that's right next to it that is sort of a white figure on a gray background. Now in her case, the only thing that she didn't quite do right on this is that both of these masks are now controlling the knockout at the same time. And you wouldn't really want to do that. You would prefer to do one or the other. So I'm going to hold down my shift key and click on the X to get rid of the vector mask. And you can see this is the edge quality that sits right on this is now coming from the pixel mask. That's what they would call this. And you can also see that it's got a small feathering on it. It's about a 0.4 pixel feather. It looks a little glowy to me on the edge. So the one thing that I did say back to Allie is that I would probably drop this down a little bit to like a 2. Again, it's a very low res file, so these parts of a pixel have a pretty serious impact. So if it was really high res file, you can easily get up into a softening of 1 pixel or 1.5 or 2 pixels. But in this case, it's 0.2 of a pixel, but I think it looks better. If you hold down the shift key and click on that one, you can kill the layer mask, the pixel mask, and then I'm going to turn the vector mask back on. You'll see it looks pretty much the same. This has actually got a feathering as well. If I turn this one on, you'll see, and in this case, there is no feathering. So this would be the original pixel content of the mask. Of the path itself. So anyway, you can feather this. It's an illusion what they're doing here. There's no way to really feather a vector, which is what a path is. There's no way to really feather that, so it's an illusion. But again, it does the same trick, and it stays sticky with your image. So if you save your image, you're actually good to go. Okay, questions about any of this? All right, so did everybody get a copy of the face image? Did anybody not? Okay, so I want you to open that face image. The face profile. If you could just open this up into Photoshop and say okay. It's a pretty small image, but that's all right. What I would like you to do is actually pen tool this out. So you'll notice in this case, the only thing that you really need to pen tool out is going to be the left side of her face. The right side is actually hitting the edge of the image, so we don't need to worry about that. So for me, again, the way I always do my pen tool work, I'm going to go to the pasteboard. So hit the F key to get to the pasteboard if you want to start that. Hit the P key to get the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more on mine, and I'm just going to start down here at the very edge. And you can crank through this pretty quickly though, but remember, really quickly, take a look at mine. I'm going to show you how I'm going to get around this really quickly just to give you a couple of refresher ideas. So again, don't bite off more than you can chew. Do not come all the way over here and expect to describe this entire line. You'll never get it. But think again about the edges of mountains. Let the curve that is the top of her shoulder, you want that tool to make that. You click and drag in the direction. Notice that this line is going in the direction that I want my path to head. I've got people who are still doing this stuff right here, and that's not going to help. Neither is that. So anyway, you pull in the direction you want it to go, and then you sort of goose it up to sort of get it along that line. And then I'm going to let go, come back over the center part of my image, hold on the Option key, and click. Now the next one I do, I can click and I drag in the direction, and you'll see I do not need to get rid of the second line because my path, the little arrow that's drawing the path, is still right on that path line. So in this case, I do not need to get rid of that second one. So I simply need to continue my way all the way along up in here like this. And I'm going to get to this point right here. I feel like this has come off away from her skin a little bit. If you hold down your Command key, you will temporarily get that white arrow, and you can actually maneuver this back down. And then again, I'm going to get rid of that point. And then I'm going to come into this area right here and then jump over so that I get the curve, and you guys can do the rest. So I need everybody to outline this really quickly. This is just a little practice using the pen tool. What we're really going to do with it is dealing with a lot of the issues that we had in terms of moving paths to the wrong image, attaching your paths, all that kind of stuff. Oh, a couple of other things. Remember, I've said this to a couple of people. If you can't get your pen tool exactly on the line that you're looking to get, and guys, you don't need to get rid of her teeth. You can actually just come into that intersection. You don't need to take the shadow outside of the inside of her mouth. You can just continue to your way up. But if you have to make a mistake, you want to trim part of your figure that no one will ever know is missing, as opposed to keeping part of your background, which people can spot from a million miles away. And if you want to kill the eyelash on the opposite side of her eye, go right ahead. I wouldn't kill the eyebrow though. And then I'm going to zip back out and come all the way around just on the pasteboard till I get back to the beginning. And immediately go to your path palette and double click on it and just call it face, just so that we don't lose it. Okay. So then I'm going to go off the pasteboard, hit the F key once, you go to the black pasteboard, F key a second time, and you'll get back to the little stoplights, and we can open up another image. So the other image that I'm actually going to open up, well, first we'll go ahead and knock this thing out. So to do it, has everybody got their path complete? Okay, I'll wait. Yeah. So it's either on the server right now, so go to the server, and it should be just under the Engelhard folder. And if not, has anybody got that thumb drive that was being passed around?
It's right there.
Oh, or if you can't get on the server really quick, it's on this drive right here. Okay, well, yeah. Did you find it? Yeah, just download it. Show me. Exactly. So again, it's faster. Like in this whole line that's go around and on here, you don't need to get rid of those second points as long as your curve, as long as that line you're drawing stays along the path line. You don't need to get rid of the second point. It'll fall into place. Yeah. That's what I end up doing along these lines right in here. And actually, to a certain extent, this line probably is the same. Yeah, there's ways to go in, and I mean, if you really get into doing this kind of work, but this is what I try to avoid for all of you, because this is where it starts to get complicated. You can actually go in and use a keyboard combination to actually, instead of getting rid of that second line, to break it so that you have two handles that sit right at that fulcrum point, and they control. You can control them separately, but it gets incredibly complex. And again, and people get frustrated, especially when they're first doing this, and then they just quit doing it, and so that doesn't really help. All right. So what?
I already did that. Didn't know it was hard.
Oh, no. But wait a second. But I say that, but I've watched people do this stuff with Illustrator. And if you know all the shortcuts and you know how to use all the other 6 pen tools and you are really good at it, you can blow through this thing in like 5 seconds. It's ridiculous. I mean,
The Coke logo when you look at it.
yeah. So, but anyway, no, but again, I learned it, again, a very old school way, actually before a lot of the extra pen tools were added. But I just, again, if it's too complex, people just won't use it. So anyway, all right, so is pretty much everybody good now? Okay, so I'm gonna load this as a selection. Hover over the path itself, hover over the thumbnail, hold down your command key and click. It'll load it as a selection. Come back over to your image right now. Now I've got mine is sitting up on top of a white layer. Is everybody else is doing the same thing? I made mine a different way. So does everybody have that? It doesn't matter. Just click on your face layer and put on add layer mask. So you should have this then either on a white background like me or just on transparent background. Which do you have? White background. Okay, so, and if you turn it off, you'll see the white. Yeah, so this is the thing that I actually sent to you guys. And if you come in and take a look at it, you can see, again, the image itself is pretty soft, but the edge is a little bit too sharp. If you hold on your Option key and you look just at the mask itself, you can see that the edge here is a little bit too sharp. So in this case, I did not feather it when I actually put it on, because I'm going to do exactly what I said. I'm going to try to discipline myself to learn to do. Instead, I'm going to use the feathering that's actually in the properties panel. So if you have your mask with the brackets around the mask, you can have everything showing. I mean, you can have the whole image showing, or again, if you hold down the Option key and click on your layer mask, you'll only see the layer mask, but you grab the feather up at the very top in the properties panel and start to drag it into a positive level. And I'm just looking to take that edge slightly off of it. So I'm softening it up just a little bit, and I'm gonna say around a half a pixel. Looks pretty good to me. So that's how I'm gonna do mine. Again, I like this method better because it keeps it editable forever. So now we're actually going to open up the metal. So need to go back to your session number 4. So we're going to go after that metal background again. So it's not in the session 5, which is where mine of this was. So just go in and find the metal background. It's in your assignment folder, and open the metal background up into Photoshop as well. And I'm going to hide everybody else. And I'm going to double click on the hand for the metal background, but I'm also going to go to my figure and double click on the hand for that, just to get it so where I can maneuver these guys. Okay, so now in this case we're going to do it the wrong way first. I'm going to grab right now I've got the face figure part is on top. It's the active image that I'm working on, and you'll see there's a layer of it with a layer mask on it, and if I click and I drag and pull this over to the metal, hold down my shift key before I let go, all that does is actually center the image. And so this is now centered. So now I've got a layer mask that is controlling what I see. It's the face, it's the profile on the face. But if I click on the path, you'll see I've lost that path. That is no longer connected. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that move. And instead, this time, I'm going to grab the layer of the layer mask. But you'll see these layers are, there's a bunch of things that are making this up. There is a smart object that's got the metal in it with some smart filters on it. There are 2 gradients that are sitting above this thing as well. All of that is one single, that's my background, my total background. So you have 2 methods to actually do this that I think are the cleanest. You could grab all 4 of these. So you could select the very top one, hold down your Shift key and come down and select the bottom one. So now all those layers are selected and you could drag all of those over. I think that's a very inelegant method. Don't do that. Although I do want you to select all of the layers here. So again, hold down the top one, select the very top one that says shade, hold down the Shift key, click the bottom one, it makes them all selected. Then if you look at the flyout menu, the little menu, the hamburger menu thing that's to the right of the layers tab, if you click on that, you'll get a flyout menu and you can say, I want to do a new group from layers. And if you do that, it'll actually offer you to name it for you. It'll call it group 1. I would call mine background. And say okay, and all that's done is actually put all of them into a group called background. So if you open up the background by clicking on the little triangle, you'll see that they're all in there. But now I can grab the entire background and simply drag it over to the face, and that would also work. However, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. The most elegant way I think to do this, and it's the thing that you need to start thinking about smart objects. You know I love them as much as I could love anything in Photoshop. So instead, I've got all of these are selected, the 3 layers are selected. You can create a smart object of that. So come up to the layer menu, down to Smart Objects, and Create Smart Object, and you'll see it puts it all into one. Now, you think, well, oh my God, I'd still like to, I don't like that shadow on the top. I want to get rid of that. If you double click on your smart object, it'll open up in its own window and all the things are still inside there. You can go in, you can turn shit off, you can adjust things, you can brighten it, you can do all the stuff that you want to do. Once you're happy with that, close it up, save it, and it's still a smart object. But now I can do all sorts of things to this. I can transform this, I can invert this, I can do all sorts of things because it's functioning as a single layer. It's protected, it's got all sorts of things going for it. So now I'm going to just grab the smart object of my background that's now called shade. It always takes the name of the very top layer. I'm going to double click on this and rename it background or metal background. And then I'm going to drag that over. Hold down the Shift key. Let go. If you get that, are you going to convert this? We should stop right here. I need everybody to look at this. So what this is saying is that there's a mismatch, that there is, that in my source, the metal background, it is in an RGB color space, and the destination background, the profile, is in an sRGB color space. So it's a mismatch. What do you want to do with this? So I usually use the very first part, convert it, because you want it to keep its color appearance. If not, if you actually said don't convert or don't preserve your color management, then when you shift color spaces, because what it'll do is it'll take this image that is the metal background that is in Adobe RGB and it'll convert it to sRGB and then put it into this image right here. So there's no real downside to either one of these per se. I simply prefer to maintain it. If I've gotten the image that I'm moving to look the way I want it, I don't want it to then change its appearance when I actually do the move. So anyway, that's why I would leave this as it is. I'm gonna go ahead and say okay to that. And it's actually covered up my whole image because it's on top. When I moved it, it's now sitting on top of my figure. So I'm simply going to grab the metal and pull it down so it's underneath my figure, and this is where we're at. Did that make sense to everyone? In doing that, you'll notice now that the path is still there. So I've still got the path, my image, I didn't orphan my path, I've got everything put together the way I want it put together, and life is grand. Okay, however, I have another problem. So is everybody this far? All right, you can close up the metal background just to not, again, I'm always about housekeeping. Go ahead, the lone metal background itself, you can get rid of it. You do not need to save it, so you don't need to save that it was turned into a smart object. I just want to be working on this image the way it is right now with the metal, with the face and the background together. So in this case, I'm going to actually transform the face. I'm going to make it smaller. So if you click on the face layer, you'll notice that there is a link between the face and the mask. I'm going to transform this thing. I'm going to make it smaller. So if you hit Command T, that is a keyboard shortcut for bringing it into the transform space. If you can't remember the Command T, it's up at the Edit menu. You'll come down to Free Transform. That will give you the little handles that are around here. Or you can pick specific transforms in the transform right underneath it. Scale is what it defaults to, so that's where we're at right now. Typically, I do not use the control handles to do my scaling. What I do is I click on the link at the very top in my options bar between width and height. I click on that and then I hover over either the H or the W and I get the scrubby slider, and I can click with the scrubby slider and drag to the left to make my image smaller or drag to the right to make my image larger. So I'm going to drag to the left just to make it smaller, and I don't care how small you make it. In my case, it's 41%. And then to accept that, you take a look at the two little icons that are up at your options bar on the far right hand side. There's a circle with a slash through it. If you click on that, it will undo your transform. If you click on the check mark, it'll go ahead and do the transform. So this has now been transformed. However, I have a problem. If you go back to my path palette, so go back to your path palette right now, click on it, and then click on the path to make it active, and you can see my path is no longer connected to this face. I transformed the face, but my path did not get transformed with it. So the path now is gigantic, and my face is smaller. And so again, just like moving this stuff, orphaning your path, my path just got orphaned. There's no way I'm going to be able to go in, unless I really remember the transform numbers, there's no way I'm going to be able to go in there and eyeball it and get this path small enough to actually match this again. Won't happen, not in a billion years. Does that make sense? And that's a problem. So there's a solution to this problem. If you've done all this, hit Command Z to bring your image back up again, because they are still now the same size. I'm going to uncheck, I'm going to just click below my path, in my path palette. I'm just going to click below it because I don't want it selected. I don't want to see the path line right now. I'm going to click on my layers palette, and you'll see we're back to normal. We've actually got the face and we've got the pixel mask on here. I'm going to go back to my path palette, and I'm going to then click to make it active. You'll see I've got a blue line around it. And now when I come back into my layers palette, make sure that you have the topmost layer selected. That's the one with the face in it. We're going to add another layer mask. So you go back down to the same thing, the way you always do it, where it says add layer mask, the little box at the bottom that's got the lighter box with the darker circle, click on it again, and all of a sudden now you'll notice you have yet again a third icon, a third thumbnail that's sitting on this layer. That is actually a copy of the path. That path actually exists. If you go back to your path palette, you'll see there's a thing right underneath our original face called Layer 1 Vector Mask. That is what this thing right here is. And the advantage to this is now, because they all three have chain links to them, now I'm going to do my transfer again. Command T to do the transform. Click on the link between width and height. Again, I'm going to then click on the height slider and drop it down. And that didn't do that. Hang on one second. I'm going to click on the circle that gets rid of that part. I'm on this part right here. Oh, and just make sure you've got your bracket keys around the pixel content of that is the face. Yeah, I just want to make sure I don't have anything else selected. So I've checked below all of my paths. I'm just going to do a normal. I've clicked on this layer that's got the face on it. I've actually got my brackets around the face, and now we're going to actually do the transform. Command T, click on the link between width and height. I'm going to do the same trick I did before. I'm going to drop it down to around 40%. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that by clicking on the check mark. And you'll notice now you have a small, if you come over to your layers palette, hold down the Option key and click on the eyeball. It'll turn everybody else off. And you can actually then see the pixel content. It was made smaller. If you then hold down your Option key and click on the pixel mask, you'll see it has also been made smaller. And then finally, holding down the Option key and click on the vector mask, you can't really see that, but if you go into the into your path layer, you'll actually see that that small vector mask is sitting right there. If you click on that, it's really hard to see because it's because there's black around it. So I am going to go back to my layers palette. I'm going to click on the original image. I'm going to hide then my pixel mask in the middle. Hold down your Shift key and click on that. And then you can actually zip in here and then go to your path palette and click on this vector mask. And I don't see the little blue line. Hang on one second. Well, I don't see the blue line, but it's actually active. And if I grab my if I grab any of my white tool, or the white arrow tool, or the black arrow tool, you'll actually see that you've got a miniature version of your vector mask is right here. I'm going to double click on the hand to kick back out and do that again so you can actually see all of it. This is now a small version of it. Because I have this, my path now is anchored to my pixel layer, anything that I do to that will actually then continue. They act as one. So if I then go and I'm going to open up my metal background again, so come up to your file menu, down to open recent and pick metal background. It'll actually open it up. I'm then going to come back to my layers palette right here. It's actually got the face on it. Sorry. That's got the face on it. I'm going to grab this entire layer and drag it on top of my metal. Hold down the Shift key and let go after I do all the warning parts, and you'll actually see it has come in with the face part, with the pixel mask part, but it's also got the vector mask part. And if I go to my path palette right now, you can see that the vector mask is sitting right here. It'll always be there, but if you want to save it the way similar to what we do with selections in the channels palette, simply drag this vector mask down to the box at the bottom that's got the little plus in the middle. It'll make a copy of it, and you can double click on this and you can just call it face, which is, I think, what we called the first one. And now we've actually got the face profile part is actually saved. So you could essentially come back to your vector mask. You can treat vector masks the same way that you do. Let me reset my workspace really quick so you can see it all. With your vector mask, you can throw it away. You can grab your vector mask and you can throw it away. And you're going to say, okay, in this case, you don't get to apply it. There will never be a destructive move like that. Now I see the gray background. Let me double click on my image to get it bigger, or zoom into this, make it bigger. I get my gray background because I'm hiding I'm hiding the pixel mask. If you hold down the Shift key and click on that again, it'll actually get rid of that part. But more importantly, my face mask is actually right here. So I can actually click on this face mask part, go back to my layers palette, click on add a layer mask again, and I can bring my vector mask back again. So once you make the connection of your path to the layer, you can do anything with it. You can transform it up and down. You can actually move it to another image. It will bring the vector mask with it. It will bring your path that you made with it, no matter where it goes, until somebody somehow divorces that. Does this make sense, everyone, what's going on? So if you ever bother to make a path of anything, make sure you connect it to the layer that it was, because then you can do anything with it. You don't need to worry about, oh my God, I moved it. I mean, that's another thing. If we actually get rid of this guy, I am going to delete that, and I'm going to get I'm going to break the chain. No, actually, I take that back. I'm going to hit the V key and move this guy, and then go back to my path and look at my original vector. You can actually see the path that I say. When you move it, because it was disconnected, it no longer lines up. And I know you're thinking, well, I can get that thing to line up again. Nope. All right, questions about any of this?
You just recommend making a vector layer when I'm making a path like this?
So what I'll say about this is that it used to be, because you can actually now, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo mine, and let's go ahead and put the vector layer mask back on. So I'm going to click on the face one, and I'm going to then go back to my layers palette, and I'm going to add it. So I'm going to bring it back on. You can actually now, this has got both of them are controlling this. So if you zoom in on this one, you can see that if you hold on the shift key and put a red X on your vector mask, you've now got your pixel mask, which is, mine's got that half a pixel feathering on it. My vector mask doesn't, so watch what happens here. If you turn on, I'm going to zoom in tight on this, you can see the edge is now much softer because I've still got a half a pixel, but I made my image way, way, way smaller. But now if I actually uncheck the vector mask, I'm going to hold the shift key and click again, you'll see it doesn't really, it kind of changes things a little bit. It cuts off part of the softening of this. So if I then get rid of my pixel mask, or not get rid of it, but hide it by clicking on that, you'll see I've got a really sharp edge here, but your vector mask has also got feathering in it. That didn't ever used to be. So it always used to be people would do exactly what I'm showing you right now, but they would never leave the vector mask in control. It was always about what they would use to actually make the pixel mask for it. But you don't have to do that anymore because you can now actually use this feathering in the properties panel to change, to put in some feathering. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The one thing you can't do is that your pixel mask, you can still go in there with a paintbrush and work on it. You can hide other things, you can you can't do that with a vector mask. It's either you're all in or you're all out. Yes?
You can technically resize it again perfectly. Just copy it so you get the pixel dimensions and then use the alignment and resize.
Oh, that's a great call. So then you put it on, so you've got 2 layers. You've got your original that's bigger and your second one that's smaller. The bigger one actually lost it. So then but it's on the smaller one, is that right?
Either one, if you fill the space and copy, you'll get on your clipboard the
Right.
exact dimension. So then you can do the dimension resize and you don't have to actually line them up manually.
Right.
You can use layer and then go down to align.
And to align layer, yeah. No, that's a really, all the tricks that you learn, that's a good one. All right, are there any questions about this? Okay, it sounds like a good time for a break. I'm going to call this 1:55. If you do a hard 10, be back at 2:05. We'll actually start working on other things today. Again. Okay. If you go to, I think this is in this may be in session 5 or 4. I'm sorry, I don't remember which one it is. Yeah, no, it's in 5. So I need you to go to your session 5 folder, even though we're in 6 today. We are going to go into retouching today, but I just want to, there's a couple things I want to finish up on this one. And this is sort of beginning to lead in a little bit more to doing your compositing work. So this part is important. So inside your session 5, there's a file called Choke and Spread. I want you to open that guy up, please. And you can get rid of the face profile. You don't need to save that. You can get rid of the metal. You don't need to save that. You don't need to save any of those things. Okay, so this is the beginning of a composite. There's a number of things off on this composite. Today is not about compositing, but it is about finalizing selection. So that's actually the part that I want to get to right now. If you have a tablet, wouldn't be the worst time to whip it out. Okay, so what I want everyone to do is to zoom into this girl's top left shoulder. So again, keyboard shortcut to get the zoom tool is spacebar and command, or if you're on Windows, spacebar and control. You will no matter what tool you have selected, you will temporarily get the magnifying glass. If you add the option key to that, you get the negative magnifying glass. It's just the way I move in and out. There's a gazillion different ways of doing it. But what you'll see if you come in really close to this is that, well, number one, you'll see that there is spill in her hair. That's a problem. You will also see that there is this green line that surrounds this figure. Especially, well, anything that's like really solid. It's very hard to pick this up in the hair. It exists there, but this is the problem that exists right here. I want you to come in really close. So for me, I'm going to zoom in to about 500, let's say 600%. I really want to be able to see this edge. So I've just got this guy, it's sitting up in here. Then I'm temporarily going to turn off my mask. So hold down your shift key and click on the layer mask and it'll turn it off. And you can see this is now this knockout on a green background. The thing that you have to realize about when we're doing these knockouts is that there's a complication that arises about how digital files actually work. And the problem that we have with digital files is that because of the way digital works, there's inherent softness that is created when your image is developed. So when you do your image inside of Camera Raw, or you do it inside of Lightroom, or you do it inside of Bibble, or inside of Capture One, when you actually go ahead and develop that file into something that you can then work on, like this is, it looks for all of the edges that are inside of your image, and it actually runs a contrast on those edges. There's an inherent softening in digital work when you actually develop the image. And so to combat that, they go in, they look at all the edges, and they actually run a contrast on the very, where those edges meet. And you can actually see the contrast right in here. So what is actually happening along this line, I'm going to zoom in as much as I can before I start to pixelate out. Yeah, that's about as much as I can. But what you can see is that there is a green background. But then as you get right next to this edge, because of this contrast move, what ends up happening is that the green that's along this edge is considerably darker than it should be. Now that is done to make my image sharper, but that screws us up when we go and do these knockouts. This is actually done using the zero selective color. When you actually do that on here, it picks the green, but the very closest edge of this has actually had contrast run on it. So the green that's along this edge is considerably darker, and as a consequence of that, it does not get picked up in that zero selective color. So if you then hold down your shift key and click on the X of the layer mask again, this is what causes this green line to happen on here. Now, is this spill? Technically, this is not spill. Technically, this is actually part of the background. It's just been made darker that I want to get rid of. The problem in getting rid of this is that you would think to yourself, well, this just defeats the whole purpose. Or so you used all of this stuff to make this mask, and now you got to go in, you got to make another mask on this that's a little bit narrower to do that. there are tricks and there's ways that you can do all of that. That's not how I work. I am actually going to try to work much faster, but I'm going to show you guys a really old school trick about how to deal with all of this part, but we're also going to introduce history states. We've talked a little bit about history states, but we're actually now going to get into them in a big way. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my history palette, and I'm going to make a history state of what this image looked like. This is just with it opening up. Now, you can see on my history states right now, I have got this thing at the very top that says choke and spread. Under it, I've got open. Under it, I've got disable mask, then enable layer mask. I'm just going to go back to what this image looked like when it was open. So I'm going to just click on open so that this is what the image looked like when it opened up. I want to make a snapshot of what this image looks, a history snapshot. So what snapshots are is that no matter what you have done to an image, you can freeze that state in time as long as you keep your image open. When you close your image, you lose all of your history. You lose not only the history steps, but you lose all the snapshots as well. So this only works while you're planning on keeping your image open, but we're going to keep this image open enough to actually work through this part. So the first thing that I'm actually going to do on this is actually not do this because I need to show you what choking and spreading really is. So to do that, before we do any more work on this, I want you to create a new synthetic file. Hit Command N and it'll bring up a dialog box. I've already told you guys I use an older series of dialog box because I like it better. I'm going to click on, if you use the new series box, that's fine. Just put in the same values that I'm going to put in. I'm going to change my drop-down menu to inches. It's just the way I work. I'm going to make this an 8x10, so 8 inches wide by 10 inches tall. And then I'm going to do a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. Make sure it is an RGB color, 8-bit. The background is going to be, in my case, will be white. And for my color profile, I'm going to click on this drop-down menu and go to Adobe RGB because that's the color space that I'm working in. And I'm going to say OK to that. And just gives you a blank image that looks just like this. All right, so how am I going to do this? I'm going to make a brand new layer. So just Command J will make a brand new layer. And then I'm going to grab the marquee tool, the M key to get the marquee tool, and I'm going to click and drag out just a box in the center. Now, my box is a fixed ratio. I know that because whenever I try, I can't get it any wider. So that's being caused by this style that's up at the very top. You probably don't have a style selected. I'm going to change mine back to just normal, and that gives it a free form. So then I can just make a box, sort of like somewhat kind of squarish right in the very middle. So I want to fill this box with black, so I'm going to hit the D key to get my background colors and foreground colors to default to black and white. Black is my foreground color. I've got an active selection going, and I am going to simply hit, because it's my foreground color, Option Delete, and then Command D to deselect. Now this is sitting on its own layer, and if I turn off everybody else, okay, actually, I'm going to start all this over. Throw that whole thing away. I don't want this on a layer that's actually got white on the background. So instead, I'm just going to throw that layer away. Instead of Command J copying my background layer, I'm simply going to add a blank new layer. So it's the little square at the very bottom of your layers palette that's got the plus in the middle. And you'll see it adds a layer that's got the little checkerboard on it. Then again, hit the M key to get your marquee tool, click and drag out. And then we're going to then fill this with black. Command D to deselect. Now, if you don't have your rulers showing, you need to have them showing now. So to get to your rulers to show, come up to the View menu, down to Rulers, and make sure there's a check mark next to it. When you do have those rulers, I'm now working on a layer that's got transparency. If you turn off the eyeball for the background layer, you'll see it's just a black cube that's floating in this void because the checkerboard indicates that there's nothing there. If you then grab, put your cursor over the top ruler, click and pull down, it'll pull down a guideline, and that guideline will actually snap to your image, which is what we wanted to do. So it's going to snap to this image, to the top edge. I'm going to grab another one from the top ruler and drag down, and it'll snap to the bottom edge. And then I'm going to grab a ruler on the other side and drag on the left side and pull it over. So, and one on the right side, sorry. And I've got one too many. If you get a guideline that you don't want, hold down your V key, it'll give you the move tool, and if you hover over that guideline, you can grab it. You'll see you'll get a double-headed arrow and you can drag it off. So now I've got guidelines that are showing me exactly where the edge of my cube is. Is this making sense to everybody? What's going on here? We good on this part? Okay. I'm then going to turn on my background layer again, and I'm going to then merge this cube down into the background layer. I want to put them together. So with the background layer on the very top selected, hit Command E. It will merge it down. The reason I went through all of this is that I needed these guidelines to be exactly on these edges so that you guys understand what's happening in this image. So if we zoom in now really close to the edge, so I want you to come in and inspect this edge. So I'm in pretty tight on this guy right now. I'm in like at 800%. You can see that there's a white background, and if you hover your cursor over the white background, you'll actually see that you're reading 255 in your info palette. If you come down into the black cube, you'll see you're reading 000, and then as you actually go from one to the other, so I'm going to start in the white area, and I'm going to drag and come down into my cube. And I'm watching my info palette the whole time. I want you to tell me if you ever see, now look at this. I actually see a 170, an 85, and a 0. That tells me that there are two tones of gray that are in between this, making this transition. The reason they do that part is, again, it's a digital issue with all of this. It's the way pixels, rows of pixels align right next to each other. It's very, very, very difficult to have that be a perfect one set of rows sitting on top of another. But basically, I go from solid white to solid black. Does that make sense to everybody what's going on? Okay. What I want, though, is I want to introduce tones that are not black or white. I want to introduce grayscale in between these two. So to do that, I'm just going to blur my image. So I'm going to come up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and you'll see I've got a Gaussian blur. I put in a 2. I'm going to crank this up even more. I'm going to actually hit it up to like a 5 and say okay. And what you'll notice has happened is that now if you zoom in, you can't zoom in too much anymore. All you see is little pixels. But now what I've got is if I start up in the white area again and I start to come down through my image, I'm starting to get, I've got a lot of gray tones that are in there. Not tons, but I do have a lot of them. In my case, I start at 255 and then I go to 253 and then I got 51, 48. I've got quite a bit of gray tone that is actually in there. And then even when you get into the black part of your image where you think it's already gone black, you've still got tonal range that's happening in there. So what I've done is, but again, if I go up in the white area, up away from this edge, whatever, it's all white. And if I go down to this edge, inside the cube, it's all black. But what I want to do now is what they call choking and spreading. This actually is an old term from the printer game. It has nothing to do with kinky sex. It's only got to do with how we are going to manipulate this edge. So in a choke, what happens is that we actually make the edge narrower than the original outline. In a spread, what we do is we make it larger than the outline. And the way you do choking and spreading is, at first, you actually have to introduce these gray tones. Then we're going to bring up the levels dialog box, Command L. And with the levels dialog box up here, what this will do is this allows you to control what happens to midtones. Again, remember, levels is just remapping tone. Levels, you're saying if I click on the white slider and I pull it, it's at 255 and I pull it over to 236. Well, all I just said was everything that was up at 230, between 236 and 235, I want to be at 255. So at any rate, what I really want you to do, I'm going to zero that part out, is we are actually going to drag this white slider towards the center, and I want you to watch what happens to this edge. But think about this. What I am doing is I'm saying I want these middle tones to be white. So if you start to pull this back in, you will notice your edge is beginning to shrink. And if you continue this, you'll see it comes well inside those guidelines that we put up on this. This is a choke. We are bringing it in. We are choking it down. So now this line is actually inside what I did, inside what my original one was. Does that make sense, everybody, what's going on? If you crank that white one back out, and then you do the opposite, we're going to grab the black slider and we are going to say, so now again, what are we doing? We are saying, okay, I want to change these mid-tones to black. When you do that and you click and start to drag towards the middle, you see that your image is beginning to grow. This is a spread. So what this allows you to do is change things in and out to bring them choked in or spread out. If you also, I'm going to ask you to put yours at or roughly the same one that I've got mine. I'm going to do a black point of 205 and a white point is still 255. You can see on the very edge here, my very edge is still a little bit soft. It's a little bit blurred up here on the very edge of this. I've spread it. It's bigger than my original lines were around it. I've spread it a little bit, but it's not quite as sharp. To get it sharp, you actually then, again, this is all contrast. Grab your white point slider and start to drag it towards the black one, and you'll see you can sharpen these up. So not only can you actually cause your image, because we're going to do this on the edge of a mask, you can actually spread it, you can choke it, but you can also sharpen it and you can also soften it. All of those controls that we had inside of, remember when we went to select and mask, and there were all those, after we did all our picking, all our selecting and all this stuff, there was that whole section in the middle that talked about how you can modify your line, you can shrink the line, you can add contrast to the line, you can do all of that. This is all the same work, but this way, it's this same thing as it's doing. But in this case, we actually get to control all of those elements independently, all those variables independently. So it's just much better. I promised you when we were doing Refine Edge and we were in that Select and Mask workspace, I would show you a better way of doing it. This is the way you do it. Questions about this? Yes? Okay, so hit cancel out of that. You have not merged this down, so when you did your blur, it didn't work. So go back in here, scroll down, let's see where you did your blur. So get rid of the browser blur. Just go back one step. Go to a new value. Good. Over here, hit Command E. Good. And then now you're actually going to blur it. Filter. Blur. Yes, blur. Okay. That guy. You have to zoom in almost a lot. Okay, good. And now, good. Drag that in this direction. It's coming down tighter. Go back. Drag it on the other direction. Up higher. Good job. No, you do it now. You've got an incredibly cool image. Cancel this. You'll notice you just get rid of that image. We gotta start over. That's okay. Just close the image up. Good. Command down. You're gonna do a dialog box. This is why change this to inches.
Okay, there we go.
Good. Make it 8 by 10. Change this to 3. You're close enough. Make that 300. Good. Okay. Or create. And change that to filter to be. Good. Now we're gonna do the same thing. So new layer. Good. M key to get the marquee tool. Drag out the middle. Perfect. That's good. You're gonna fill it with black. So option delete. Good. And use deselect. Good. Drag your guidelines down to touch. Or Okay, so let's actually do this to our image. So you can cancel out of all this. You can throw away that new file. It was just to show you what it is actually going to go on behind the scenes. So this is my image right here. You need to do this to your layer mask. However, before we do anything, we want a history snapshot of what this image looks like before we either choke or spread it, because that way you can actually paint and fill with history states. So this allows us to go back and forth with a paintbrush to control what our image looks like. We can combine a single image of ours using multiple states of history, what it looked like along the way. So that's what we're going to do here. So with this image, I'm up at my very first state where it was actually opened up. The first thing I'm going to do is make a snapshot of this history state. So it's the little camera icon that sits down at the very bottom. If you click on that guy, again, in the old days, it used to open up and it would give you a way to name this thing, which is important for us. So mine's just snapshot 1 sitting up at the top. I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to call this pre-choke. And say, okay. Now I need to come back down and click on my open state. Again, this is just the shit that Adobe has done by orphaning this, by not paying attention to this. People who use this all the time are like up in arms, and I am the leader of that pack. Because it's just unnecessary. Again, they just don't value this. They think that somehow AI is going to save the world, not realizing that AI is going to put them out of business. But at any rate, I rant. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the choke. So make sure that your layer mask is selected. So it's the layer mask of this image. Make sure that that is selected. And we need to make it worse first. Again, if you hold down your option key and click on the mask, you can see we have a few gray tones in between here, but not a lot. This was like the first one. We've only got like, I don't know, 6, 7 of them, whatever. It's not enough to do a really effective choke or spread on this guy. So make sure that your layer mask has got the brackets around it. We're going to blur it first. Up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. Now in this case, guys, this is part art. That's all I can say to you. Now the blur tool is sticky dialog box. So the last time when I put in a value, it was a value of 5. I can tell you right now, looking at this, I've done this 100 billion times, so I know this is too strong of a blur. I'm going to back my blur off. You definitely need it to be worse, but you don't want it to be so bad that it will not do its job. So in my case, I've got it. It's like a 2. I'm going to use my preview check mark to turn this on and off again. And I'm feeling like that's probably good enough to get this. The thing about this is that if it doesn't work right now, let's say I don't put in enough blur, you simply go back in history and you do it over again. Instead of doing a 2, I would do a 3. But I feel pretty good about this one. I'm awfully zoomed in on this though, so let me back out just a little bit just to sort of take a look at this. I'm gonna see what a 3 looks like on this guy. No, I'm gonna go back to the 2. Again, there's no magic number. In some cases it'll be 2, some cases it'll be 10. That's all I can say to you. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that, and then we are going to choke this thing. So again, with your layer mask still active, Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. Now, I don't ever really remember which direction to do. I don't know whether I'm going to grab the white point slider and pull it to the middle, or the black point slider and pull it to the middle. But you'll see, in one case, your image will get way worse, and in the other case, it actually gets way better. My guess is what I'm really trying to do is choke this. I'm going to grab the black slider and try to pull it in. And yes, indeed, you can see what's happening. So as it starts to come in, that choke has actually pulled the entire edge in. And so in my case, I've pulled it in right around, if you want the same value that I've got a 186 for my shadow point. Now, if you look at the edge of this, you could say to yourself, well, yeah, but it looks too soft. I mean, look at the whole edge, and that's what I was saying to you. If you now grab your white point slider and start to pull it to the middle, you will actually sharpen that whole edge up. You can bring it back so it's got, you don't want to bring these things right next to each other. If you do that, your image will look cut out. And before you say okay, you can actually take a look around your image. That part's looking pretty good. Use your preview check mark on and off to see what you just did. And it's like, yeah, I think that part actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. Again, if you want the exact same numbers that I had a 186 for my shadow point and a 235 for my white point, and say okay. Did everybody get rid of that horrible line that was on the side of her, right? How long did that take you? Right? You're not in there with some fucking little paintbrush running around trying to actually paint it. No, it's a nightmare. However, there's a problem with this. I'm going to back all the way out. Don't do anything right now, because that first thing I need it to do is actually make a history snapshot of this. So I'm going to come back to my history state, and I'm going to click on the little camera again. It will then rename that also snapshot number 1, even though it's not snapshot number 1. It's actually snapshot number 2, but that's okay. Don't be particular about this. Just, who cares about precision? Anyway, double click on this, and we're going to call that post choke. This is what my image looks like after I did the choke. C-H, okay, E. And then again, come all the way down to levels again in your history part. Otherwise, you lose your history. Now, there may not be anything in here to save, which is fine. But that's not how Photoshop normally works. Photoshop normally, if your history keeps going down until you hit the limit that you set in preferences, which for most people is 50 states. And so that's how I want mine to work. I don't want something to all of a sudden erase 4 states of it without me saying, oh yeah, go ahead and erase that all. I mean, at the very least, give me a warning. But at any rate, so now this image has actually been post-choked. So the whole thing is in there. The problem that I have with all of this, though, is that it destroyed the hair. So if you go back, you can actually click on your history states between the two right now. If you come back up and you click on pre-choke, you'll see that there's all this beautiful feathery hair around her that I lose. It's got spill in it. I need to fix that, but I don't want to lose all that hair. If I go back to post-choke, you'll see it gets rid of all of that part. However, if I look at the body part here and I go back to pre-choke, you'll see that you got the dreaded green line. And if you look, that green line goes all the way. Look at it. Runs down her pant leg. It runs along her shoes. It runs along the entire outline of this. If I go back to post-choke, all of that part's gone. So then you need to decide, okay, how much work do you really want to do? For me, it's easier for me to actually restore the stuff that the choke got rid of than to just paint the choke. So what I'm going to do is, if you take a look, nobody ever really selects these. Again, I'm going to ask you to go back down to the bottom of your history state and select where it said levels again. I do not want to lose this history. But the way we use these history states now to paint with them is you see at the very top of your choke and spread, it looks like there's a paintbrush with a little arrow going counterclockwise in it. That's on there by default. So what that means is that if we were to use the history brush right now, it would return your image to what your image looked like when you really first opened it. That's not what I want. I want my image to now look like what it looked like right before I did the choke. So you click on the little box that is to the left of your pre-choke state. Do not select the pre-choke state. That's not what we're doing. If you take a look and you zoom in right now, I just put that little check mark or the little icon right next to the pre-choke state. But if you go in and look at this edge, this is not what my image looked like in a pre-choke. The image is still what it looked like after I did the choke. I'm simply saying when I use the history brush, I want you to paint with what this image looked like in the beginning. Okay, you still need to make sure that your layer mask is selected, because when I do this painting, what I'm trying to do is get the mask to look like it looked before we did the choke so that I can bring the hair back. So then I'm going to come up next to the hair right here. I am going to do this on a tablet. How do you set your history state? If you come all the way down in the very middle of your tool palette, there is right underneath the clone stamp, you'll see a thing that looks just like that mark that's right next to the state that we just plugged in. It is a paintbrush with an arrow that goes counterclockwise. If you click on that, you'll see you have two possibilities in there. You've got the history brush tool and you've got the art history brush tool. You want to make sure that you use the history brush tool. History brush tool has options. So when you click on it, you can actually come up and where you see the size part, it works just like any other brush. The size part, in my case here, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this as a 0% hardness. I don't wanna see a really hard edge between my pre-choke and my post-choke, so I'm gonna keep it as a soft brush. I'm gonna use a blending mode of normal, but you can use all the blending modes. I'm gonna use a opacity of 100 and a flow of 100 as well, but all of those tools will function with a history brush. So you can use, don't forget, you've got all of those. And then I'm gonna come over here to her hair. Let me get my tablet going again. I'm gonna make my brush a little bit larger using the brackets right next to my P key. And then I'm simply going to start to paint this area along her hair to bring back all of the fine part. Yes, I agree, I'm bringing back the spill, but that's okay. I can get rid of the spill. This is actually controlling the mask. I want the mask to have all that fine feathery hair. If you actually hold down your option key and just look at the mask, I'll show you what I'm doing. Let me go back in history state really quickly. You don't need to do this. I just want you guys to understand what I'm doing. Look at how bad and shitty this cutout is of her hair. This is what it looked like after I choked it, but now look what happens when I use the history brush to bring all of this feathery hair back into this. So now I'm getting the best of both. I get what my image looked like before I choked it right around all of this hair, but I've got what my image looked like after I choked it to deal with all of the edge of her body. I'm gonna click on this again so that I can see the whole mask. So that part works out really well. And then I just go inspecting. All I'm doing is holding down my shift key and running around to actually check and make sure that it did get all the part on her legs and all of that part. One thing you need to worry about though is one of the areas that you also may not want to be choked out is right around shoes. So if you take a look at, I'm now looking right underneath her right foot. If you take a look coming down here, I'm gonna click on this and drag across this with my history brush. It didn't do anything down there, so that's not a problem. But then on the other side, I'm gonna do the same thing and you will actually see it doesn't really do anything. In that part on the very top of the shoe, it actually ate into the top of her shoe. If you then go back to the other side over here of her heel, it brings that back in. I don't want that to actually be a part of it. So all I'm saying is that it's not only hair. Sometimes this choke will actually remove things that you need to restore. But in this case, it's actually looking pretty good to me. So I'm feeling relatively good about that part. Yeah.
How do I get to the history brush again?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, how do I get to the history brush?
So the history brush is right underneath the clone stamp tool. It's this guy right here. All right, did this work for the rest of you? Did it bring that part back? So let's say that you overdid it. Let's say, oh God, Verser, I don't like all that flyaway feathery hair part, whatever. You can come back to the top of your history palette. And then you can put your brush, instead of at the pre-choke state, put it at the post-choke state. And now when you paint with it, you will actually be doing just the opposite. You can get rid of all that stuff, all the hair that we returned to that. Well, no, that was a mistake. I didn't really want to do that. So I'm going to go back and put the brush next to my pre-choke state, and I'm going to bring all of that part back. So this allows us to make a single image out of different times in history when different things were existed in different ways. It allows us to combine those together selectively, and I can go back and forth all day. You're not only limited to 2 of these. You can actually have, I don't know if there's a limit on history states. I don't think there is. But at any rate, just also remember though, that those history states do not get saved when you close your image up. Okay. 2 other things I want to get to really quickly, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll jump into retouching for the rest of the class. So right now, I do want to get rid of the spill on this. And the problem that I've got is that this is a smart object. So we talked about this last week, and you remember last week when I showed you removing spill, what we did was we just made a copy of this layer and rasterized it. That's one way of doing it. I want to show you another possible way of doing this. It's a little more complex and a little bit more involved, but it's worth showing you because it introduces some other principles that we actually need to talk about here. So instead of using my brush set to a blending mode of color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer above my smart object. So simply click on the icon at the very bottom of your layers palette, the little square with the plus. We're going to add a new blank layer on the top. I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to call it spill removal. And then I'm going to change the blending mode of the entire layer. So I'm going to go from normal all the way down to color. So again, remember what happens when you use color. It will change the color, but it will respect the luminosity. So I will not see this change. I will not see, well here, this is the difference of what the 2 would look like. Don't do this. I'm just going to show you really quickly. I'm going to come up to normal blending mode. I'm going to hit just a regular brush. Still working on this, the B key. Make sure it's a medium soft brush. Normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow. I'm going to get a much larger brush. I'm going to sample the color of her hair by hovering over her hair, holding down the Option key and clicking. That loads a sample of it. And then working on this spill removal layer, I'm just going to do this. That is not really good spill removal. It got rid of the green, but look at my image. Command Z to undo that. Instead, I'm going to change the blending mode now of that layer to color. And now when I paint across this, it respects the luminosity. So I still see the hair, I see all the lines and the color different part. So you can go ahead and paint all of this out. So if you've done this with me so far, go ahead and do this. We're going to paint it all out. But what you'll see is also happening, especially here, I'm going to be really sloppy. I'm going to hit the tree. So look at the tree over here. You can see that got spill removed from it. So did all the leaves and all of that kind of stuff in the background. I'm being very sloppy about this. But you can see all of that has actually also had the same thing happen to it. It's been recolored. Does that make sense, everybody, what's going on? If I turn this layer off, you can actually see, look at that. It's all that coloring. So the problem is that it removed the spill from the girl, but I would need to put a layer mask on this. So you could conceivably copy this layer mask that just isolates the figure and put that up on top, and it would work. The problem with that is that if you keep doing that repeatedly, you end up with like a whole bunch of layers. They all have the very same mask on it. And then if you have to change one thing about one mask, you have to change all of them. What is much simpler to do is what we call clipping groups. So what a clipping group means is that if I take this top spill removal layer and I clip it to the layer that's underneath it, it will inherit this mask. To do that, you hover over, you put your cursor, so take a look up at my screen. I wish that fucking thing would go away. Up at my screen. And you can see I'm hovering right between the spill removal layer and the figure layer. Hold down your Option key and your cursor will turn into a square with an arrow that points down. When you click on that, what'll end up happening is you'll see all the spill that happened on the woods in the background, all of that went away because this layer that is the spill removal has inherited the layer mask that's actually underneath it. to make this seem even more evident, let's undo that. So again, to unclip it, you do the same move. Hold down your layer key, hover your cursor between the two layers, hold down your option key, click. That will unclip it. I'm going to fill this entire layer with this foreground color, the whole thing. So actually, I take that back. I'm not, because that's really going to fuck up the image. So never mind. I'm going to go back to right where I was. I was going to try and be really splashy and flashy, and I'm not. So unusual for me. Okay. Questions about this? Okay, finally. While we've got time, we've got 10 minutes to do this, and then we're going to take a break, and then we really do need to get into retouching. Why do you know for sure that this girl is not, that this isn't real? What's the most obvious, glaring reason you know that this girl was not shot in these woods? There's a number of reasons. The lighting. Keep going. The what? The lighting, the color, contrast. Yeah, I get all these things. That's not the most obvious. What?
Her feet.
What about her feet?
I mean, just no one standing on anything.
She's just floating in space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How can I anchor her to the ground? Okay. I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is we're going to start early in this. The bad news is the thing that we're talking about here is shadows. She has no shadows. That's why she's floating above the ground. Actually, that's a way, if you are doing a composite and you want people to appear to be levitated, you do that by eliminating the shadows, and they will appear to be levitated, right? You need shadows to ground. If she was standing on that ground, there would be shadows underneath her feet. That would be an inescapable part. If we can supply that part, great. How many people in this room consider themselves to be really quality illustrators? You draw really well, you draw beautiful, like real life, that kind of stuff. Anyone? Yeah, me included. Not that kind of guy. So there are people who can go in and draw the most perfect shadows in the world. They're unbelievable. We are going to spend more time on shadows than you want to spend. They are one of the most difficult things to get right. So I'm going to show you tricks. We are going to start very simply. I'm going to show you the simplest of all shadow right now. Things are going to get much more complex later on because shadows are complex. So to show you how to do this, I just need everybody to do this with me. So where we are going to start is at the background layer. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to click my background layer. You always, and people do this all the time, I'm begging you to do it the way I'm suggesting you do it to keep your life simpler. There are people who will put shadows up on top of a figure. And the problem with that is that they're putting a shadow on top of the thing that's casting the shadow, and that is an impossibility. So for instance, if you take a look at my hand right over here. My hand's casting a shadow on the wall, right? Can this shadow be on the top of my hand?
No.
Impossible. People do that shit all the time. And then you get a shadow on top of this that you then have to mask out. So then you're masking out the shadow part, and then you're masking out the shadow that's actually hitting the top of the hand part, and it's just a nightmare. Don't do that. If you put your shadows underneath your figure and on top of the background, you will never have to mask it out. It will never, your image, your figure will always be on the top of your shadows. So please don't do that. I will spank you the first time you do it, and I will spank you hard the second time you do it. It is a waste of time. It's like people who put backgrounds on top of figures and then mask that out. Why? Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we are simply going to add an empty layer. So click on the little, so I've selected my background layer. Click the little square with the plus in the middle, double click on it and call it Shadow 1. That 1 should give you an indication of where things are going. And then we're going to zoom in. I'm going to actually start with the foot, left foot. That's where I'm going to go. No, take that back. Let's start with the right foot. We'll start simpler and then get slightly more complex. So the first thing I would do is just in looking this, say, Well, it doesn't look like she's really in the right spot for this. So I think you guys have the same image that I've got. When I originally did this composite part, this actually was a composite that I did years. I mean, it was the real thing. We had used sandbags in the studio to rebuild the rocks. And so the way this thing is, where she's really supposed to be is, you'll notice that there is the heel that you can see. It's actually supposed to be right on the top edge of the rock that's right behind it. So if you select your figure, we actually then need to connect it to the spill removal, because I'm going to move the figure. And I need to remove the spill removal part of it as well. But I've gotten all the work in here done that I need to, so the idea that I'm going to then, I either got to lock them together or I've got to move them the same, just seems pointless to me, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of them. I've selected the smart object and the spill removal, and I'm going to make that a smart object. You can nest smart objects. So this is now the complete knockout. There's a bunch of other spill on her that we haven't removed, but that's beside the point. If I needed to remove that, I could double click on this figure, open it up, and then I could go in and continue my spill removal work right there, but I don't need to do that part. But now I can actually move things, transform them, and I'll transform everything as one unit. So I'm gonna hit the V key to get the move tool, and I'm simply going to move it straight up so that the bottom of her heel touches the back of that edge. And this is a better place for me to actually, this was how it was shot, so it'll hopefully function better. So with my shadows number 1 selected, here's the trick. The first thing that we're going to do is use the gradient tool. So to take a look at gradient tools really quickly, I want everybody to do another synthetic file. So really quick, hit Command N, yes. Just hit the V key, because you're just trying to move it, and then just drag it straight up. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, no, but not that. It's that right there. That's right across. Yeah. Okay. You want them in the same smart object. Select them both first, and then convert all of that to a smart object. And then you can move the whole thing straight up, and you don't have to worry about the spill being out of register. So, but it's that heel on that edge, just up, not up and over and around. And anyone else? Okay, new synthetic file, folks. And then you're going to hit the G key. The G key stands for the gradient tool. If you can't remember that part, it's right in the middle of your toolbar palette. If you click on it, it's also got a flyout menu. You have the gradient tool and the paint bucket tool. This is a sticky tool. If you've ever used the paint, well, they're all sticky, but if you use the paint bucket tool, I don't know anybody who uses that still, but nonetheless, it'll look like a paint bucket, but it's the gradient tool. This is the one that I want. Once you get to the gradient tool, I'm also going to hit the D key to default my foreground and background colors to black and white. It'll just make it easier to see. Up to the options bar, there's a drop-down menu in the very top. By default, Photoshop now has recently, probably in the last year and a half, 2 years, changed the way the gradient tool works. And they've made it actually much better, but it's also, it used to be that the gradient tool was like a bicycle, and now the new gradient tool is like an F1 fighter, and it's got 1,000 controls, and it's just like, I don't need you guys to spend the next rest of this semester learning how to use the gradient tool. I just need it to work really quickly. So we will look at gradient tools later in somewhat detail, but anyway, I don't want you to use the F1 Fighter version of this. I want you to come down and click on the classic gradient. So if you don't do this, where we're going to next is just going to confuse the shit out of you. So up to that gradient part and come down and pick classic gradient. Does everybody have classic gradient, please? And the thing that's just to the right of it is a drop down. It's a series, if you click and you'll open it up, it's a series of pre-made gradients. and that's fine. We can actually explore these. There's only a couple of them we're going to look at. When you click on that, you'll get a drop-down menu, and you should see a thing that's got basic gradients. Can everybody find that basics? And you want to click to open that up. There's only 3 of them that are on the inside. If you hover over the first one, you usually will get an indication of what it is. And the first one says foreground to background color. So no matter what your foreground and background colors are, you will get that here. So if it's red and green, it'll be a red and green gradient. That's what that'll be. The second one is, if you hover over it, it's going to say foreground to transparent. The third one, if you hover that, is always black and white. No matter what your foreground and background colors are, it's always black and white. You want to pick the second one, the one in the middle. You want to pick foreground to transparent. Now, how many people in this room in their preview right here have black to transparent, and how many have white who has white to transparent? If you have white to transparent, it's only because your colors, you can just look at my screen. You don't need to do this. I don't know if I can change this part here. I can flop it there. You'll see if white is your, if white is your foreground color, you're going to get this thing. It's going to look like white to black. White to transparent. You don't want that. You actually want it to be black. So you want your foreground color to be black. Click on the basics. Click on the one in the middle. It will be black to transparent, and that's what we're hoping for here. And then just click up near the word Adobe to get rid of that drop-down menu, and then we're going to take a look at it. There are 5 types of gradients that you can use that run across the top. If you pick the first one, this is a linear gradient. Come down onto your image, you'll see that you have a little plus on your image. If you click, I'm on the left-hand side. If you click and drag to the right-hand side and come all the way over, if you want a perfectly straight linear gradient, you hold down the Shift key, and you will see that you can't move your image up, your line up or down. Bring it all the way over to the horizon and let go. That is a linear gradient. If you then, gradients write each other, they write on top of each other every single time. So if I pull another gradient, it's going to completely change this. It's not going to add to it. It's going to entirely rewrite it. You can use a linear gradient. If you come down here, let's just come down to the very corner, lower left-hand corner, click and drag up to the upper right-hand corner. It'll pull your gradient in that direction. So it's still a linear gradient, but it's just now done on an angle. If you click the next gradient over, so again, I'm looking at those little icons at the very top. There's 5 of them. Click on the next one. This is a radial gradient. If you come down into the very middle of your image and click and drag out and let go, you'll actually see that that is adding to the previous gradient, which shouldn't be happening. But at any rate, to see what this really looks like, I'm going to fill my image right now with white. White is my background color, so Command Delete. We're just going to start with something new. And then I'm going to show you a radial gradient. So you just click and pull it out, and you'll see it starts solid in the middle, and then it feathers all the way out to the edge. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, and we're going to go to the next of those little icons over at the very top. If you click again in the middle and pull out on this one, what this is supposed to give you is a sense of actually looking down on, just imagine yourself in an airplane and there is some sort of like fissure in the ground. So it kind of moves in a circle around this, but it's an extremely hard line. So it's a gradient that curves all the way around, as opposed to the circular gradient that started solid in the middle and pulled out. If you go to hit Command Z again to undo that, if you go to the next one over, they call this a reflected gradient. So in this one, starts kind of up in the top area of your image, click and pull straight down. And in this case, we don't have enough of it, or we pulled it too much. So I think Command Z to undo that. Click right in the middle and just do a short one. And what you can see is that it starts with a background color, it goes to your foreground color, and then goes back to your background color. We actually use this at times to control depth of field in an image. Command Z to undo that. And then finally, the last one, if you click again in the middle and draw down, this is supposed to, it's supposed to be imagining that you are, for instance, like say you're inside of a church that has a steeple and no inside ceiling. And if you were to look straight up, it's supposed to be sort of like this pyramid shape that converges to the very top. That's basically what's going on. For our purposes, we're going to use the circle gradient. So when you're doing shadows, you set your foreground color to black. You make sure you have a classic gradient picked. In the drop-down menu, you make sure that you're doing foreground to transparent. And then finally, you make sure that you're using a circular gradient. And you can get rid of this guy right now. You can get rid of that synthetic layer. So watch how I do this. Don't do this yet. Just watch how I do it. I'm going to zoom in here to her foot. I'm going to click. I'm going to click on my shadow layer because that's where I want to put this. I'm going to click and drag straight down, and you see I get a circular gradient on that. Immediately, you need to transform this, Command T. When you do a transform, you'll get a dialog box around this that lets you control it. If I start just at the, don't worry, I'm going to do this again with you guys. If I start at the very top and grab the transform tool, I need to flatten this thing so it looks more like a pancake. And I click and I drag down. It only pulls the top down. It does not collapse this thing from both sides, which is what I want it to do. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. Instead, you hold down your Option key at the same time and watch what happens to my control handles. Both of them come down at the same time. Still holding down my Option key, I can actually drag my image to make it wider, or I can make it smaller. I'm going to make mine a little bit smaller. And then finally, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this thing right underneath her foot. Now, once I get underneath her foot, it's sort of where I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and click on the check mark and say OK. So I need everyone to do this with me. I'm going to get rid of mine. I'm going to start this from the very scratch. So I'm just going to get rid of that part. I'm going to create a new Shadow 1. So hit the G key. You're going to always hit the G key first. It just is the fastest way to pick it. So the G key for gradient tool. And this is not giving me the gradient tool. It's trying to control an angle on something, and I have no idea what that is. All right, gradient tool, click, drag down. Oh, fuck me. I hit some key, and it looks like it was the percentage on my opacity slider. G key, you pull down, Command T, grab the top control handle, hold down your Option key, and collapse this. Click, and when you click in the middle, do not click on this very center, this targeted part. If you click on the center targeted part, you'll end up moving. It's called the anchor point. You'll move the anchor point. You won't move the shadow. And then just bring this thing straight up underneath the figure like that. So once we get this thing under the figure, go ahead and hit the check mark. Your next move immediately is to hit the E key. That stands for the eraser tool. Once you get the eraser tool selected, you need to do some settings on it. So in the settings for the eraser tool, typically I keep my eraser at about a 50% hardness. You want a soft edge, but you don't want a completely soft edge. So 50% on that. In the drop-down menu for the type, it will always be a brush type eraser. 100% opacity on this. I've got a flow of around 9%. I want to be able to scrub this in slowly. And so this will take time in order for the eraser tool to work. I'm still going to work on my tablet. And then what I do is I come over here. If you think about this shadow, the shadow has to only be underneath her foot. It would never be on this outside edge of her foot. There's nothing that would control that. The lighting is coming from the top down. So I need to erase the shadow on this part. So I just scrub back and forth to get rid of that part. So I don't think my flow is where it needs to be. I'm going to bring my flow up closer to like a 20% and do that part in there. And I'll fix that. Now, in some cases, this shadow would be enough. I frankly don't think it's underneath the other right side of hers. Yours may be different. I don't think mine is under the right side of this one enough. So I'm simply going to do the same thing again. However, I'm going to put it on a new layer. So new layer, name my first one Shadow 1. Name a second one, Shadow 2. And say OK to that. G key to get the gradient tool. Click and drag down. Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. Hold down the Option key. Click and collapse these. Bring this over now up onto the other part. You can rotate your shadows, which I am going to do slightly. Bring this up a little bit like that. I feel better about that. Go ahead and say okay to this part. I'm going to now collapse these into one. Just hit Command E. It will merge it down. E key to get the eraser tool. I need to erase the shadow part that is on this side now that would never actually be there. And this is looking reasonably good for me right now. However, the shadow is too strong. You would not have a black shadow underneath that. If you look at the shadow of the rocks that are around this, things are not entirely black. Look at, you can still see something underneath this shadow of this rock right in here. This is jet black in here. So to pull that off, simply drop the opacity of the shadow down to let it sort of like open up a little bit. And then double click the hand to kick back out, and then turn your eyeball on and off. This is the beginning of the shadow. We're going to do one really quick one on the other side because we're running later on this than I hope to run, but that's okay. Again, we're going to add a new blank layer for the other side. I'm going to call this Shadow 2. I'm going to then zoom in to this other area over here. G key to get the gradient tool. Click. I'm going to pull out a little bit bigger one right now. Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. Hold down the Option key and click to crush this. I'm going to sort of move this into place, but I'm going to rotate this one now so that it runs along the same edge that her foot would actually run. Maybe pull that back a little bit like that. It's too deep, it's too wide now, top to bottom, so I need to collapse that a little bit. Hold down my Option key and click on the other control box to narrow this down. And that looks good enough to me. Hit the E, go ahead and say okay to that. Hit the E key to get your eraser tool. And the flow on that eraser tool actually was properly set closer to 10, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. So again, thinking about this shadow, there would be no shadow in front of her like this, so all of that goes away. There is no shadow in the back behind this, that also goes away. And then again, this shadow is too dark. I would actually drop the opacity off here a little bit. Now, I've got the shadow part that's in the front of her shoe up in this part right in here pretty well. The one in the back actually could conceivably be darker. I would maybe consider doing another one there. But you can actually see really quickly, again, this today isn't about shadows. But this girl is now anchored in there. If you actually turn the shadows off and on, I'm going to group my shadows together so I can do it just with one click. Select both of your shadows, click on the little flyout menu part, say new group from layers, call it shadow, and then turn it off and on. Floaty girl, grounded girl, floaty girl, grounded girl. Questions? You will thank me when you get to doing shadows. Okay, I've got 3:15. Let's make it a hard 10. Be back at 3:25. So, some sobering news. Say what? Oh, some sobering news. You can't see anything. No. Actually, you might prefer not to see this. This is the current grade standings in this class right now. And for me, when I look at the very top of it, it seems it's pretty typical, right? A couple of A's, there's 4 or 5 B's, 6 B's, something like that. A few C's, 1 D. There are 8 people who are flunking this class. 8 out of 20. And some really badly. There's somebody who's got a 34.28 average in this class. That is a deep fucking hole to try to dig yourself out of. And this isn't even really taking absences into account. So it's just late assignments. That Coca-Cola assignment was one of the easiest, took everybody no more than 10 minutes to do, and half the class didn't do it. I can't make you do this shit. But you should know this about me. If you come to me at the end of the semester and you beg and you crawl and you grovel and all that shit, I don't care. You'll flunk. I flunk people every single semester. Not because I'm an asshole, because you just didn't do the work. That's what I ask you, begged of you. Day number 1, just do the work and you'll be fine. If you get caught behind or you don't understand something, get in touch with me. I will meet with you after this. I will put in the time with you to get you through this class, but I cannot do this for you. So it's not too late right now. I can tell you that part. We're a third of the way into the semester, a little bit more. You can dig out of this. But if it keeps up like this, I'm telling you right now, your one solution, the one solution you have is to go to our website, click on important dates, and make real special attention to this one right here. November 7th, a month from today, is your last day to withdraw from a class without having a grade forced on you. You will end up with a W on your transcript and not an F. But it's time to kick it into gear. Any questions about any of this? Okay. Okie dokie. So, if we go down to our class number 6 for today, and you have a set of files in there, the one that I want you to find is the one called Clone Healing 1. If you could open that up into Photoshop. Today starts the real retouching part of this class. And the other one, the choke and spread file, you can close that up. We're done with that. You don't need to save it. It's not part of your homework. We will start your homework today, though, so that's any consolation. Okay. So when this thing opens up, you'll notice there's 2 layers in here. One's got like a little arc on the top, and that's always the one that's selected, but it's turned off. You can't see it. So I want you to go ahead and select the background layer. This is the one we're actually going to start on right here. So is everybody in here? So it's in session number 6. It's called Clone Healing 1. Okay. Who in this room has no idea what this clone stamp tool is? Okay, good. Well, not good, but that's okay. We're going to figure it out. How about the healing brush? How many people in here, no idea what it is? Most of you have used these things for probably quite some time if you're doing that. What's the difference? Shoot.
One, you're choosing the image that you're going to stamp on, and then the other heals, I don't know what it's actually.
You're close. You're moving in the right direction. At least you acknowledge that there is a difference. Most people go, I don't know. So, but the difference matters because, again, if you use the right tool for the right job, that's great. If you use the wrong tool for the wrong job, that's not great. So anyway, this part actually matters. So we're going to look at what they really are and how they really work. And I just need you to keep that part in mind. Now, we're going to get into much more advanced retouching starting next week, where this is going to matter even more than it's going to matter today. So again, the concept that I want you to get in your mind is, what does the clone stamp actually do, and what does the healing brush actually do, and what's the difference between those two? That's just what we need to get through right now, and then we will actually jump into doing some serious retouching. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to hit the S key. That stands for the clone stamp tool. If you click on the clone stamp, it looks like a stamp. It's in the middle of your tool palette on the side. Did I start this recording again? Yes. It looks like a little stamp in the middle. If you click on its drop-down menu, make sure that you got the clone stamp tool, not the pattern stamp tool. It's the one at the very top. And we're going to come over here. I'm going to come over to the gradient side that's actually over here. And I'm going to make again, it's a brush. I'm going to make mine larger. I want to actually make it also a completely hard brush. It's just easier to see what's going on. So up in your options bar, click on your drop-down menu. Make sure that this thing is 100% hard. Then you can use blending modes also in the clone stamp tool. Make sure yours is at normal. You can also use opacity and flow. Make sure that both of those are set to 100%. You can also change whether this is aligned or not. We will look at that in a second. Make sure that the check mark is on aligned. Leave that part on right now. These are all the defaults. And then current layer. We don't really have layers underneath this, so that part wouldn't really matter. So anyway, we'll talk about what that is. And then these next things that are over here to the side, we can talk about what those are in just a second, but right now, no. So I'm going to hover over the center of the gradient up at the very top. And what you do with the clone stamp tool is that, let's say I want to change something in this just gray left area. You don't pick this is your destination. This is what you want to fix. What you pick with the clone stamp tool first is the source. So what I want to do is I want to put gradient in this area over here. So I start with the gradient. I'm going to just hover over the middle part at the top of my gradient. Hold down your Option key, and you will get that targeting adjustment tool. This is the same little icon that you get when you are using the Option key to pick. If you've got a normal brush selected, it will allow you to pick colors of paint. So this is when we were doing the spill removal. We would use the Option key. You would get this little thing. You would click on something and it would sample that color. But in our case, we're actually going to click on it, and that now sets the source of this. If I then hover over my destination, you should get a preview of what's going to actually happen. So when everybody moved over there, did you get this black space on the other side? Because you can control this. You can actually eliminate this. You can actually see part of it. We'll look at all that in a second. But everybody's got the black part, right? All right. If we then simply click, you will notice that there is a small little X that showed up on the gradient side that is showing you the source. That's saying, okay, this is where you are. And now as I start to drag down, you will see the X on the cross that's on the right-hand side is showing you the source. The source is now moving along with the change in the destination. And if we come all the way down like this and then let go, it actually did a replacement. This is a pixel for pixel replacement. Does that make sense to everyone? If I come back up to the very top, and I'm not even going to try to get at the exact same space near the top, and click and drag down, you will actually see nothing happening, and that is odd. What the hell is going on? Let me try this again, because something here is not right. Yeah, I don't know what got hit in the middle. Maybe I hit something, I don't know. But at any rate, if you stroke down a second time, you will actually see that you get the clone stamp is happening and it's in perfect register. So if I continue to do this along the whole thing here, whatever, I ultimately will end up remaking most of the gradient, but it all fits. Does that make sense? Because I've got this aligned in check. Whenever I come back up to the top here and click, you can see my little arrow goes right back up to the top again. So that's basically how this tool works, set up at its default. Are we good on this? All right, go back up to the very top of your image and click on open again. It just gets rid of all of that. Make sure you select your background layer again. This time I'm going to uncheck aligned. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start a little further over to the right-hand side just to give ourselves a little bit more room when I go over and do this. I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to click to set my source again, and I'm going to come over to the other side, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag down. And it looks just like it did before. But now instead of starting up at the very top, I'm actually going to start in the middle, all the way over on the left-hand side. And I'm going to click, and I want you to look where the X is on the gradient side. It goes right back up to where it originally was to start with. And now when I click and drag down, it is not in register anymore. If I start in the middle over in here and click and drag down, what's happening when you break that link between being aligned and not, you then every single time you click and start, it goes back to the original source point. There are times that we really want to use this behavior. Because a lot of times in retouching, if you can find a really good source for texture, a really good source for color, a really good source for any of those things, you can always just repeatedly go back to that source to keep with the good texture or the good color. You don't have to constantly resample your source. So at any rate, does this make sense to everybody what's going on? We good on this part? Okay. You can change how, I'm going to hit open again just to get rid of all of that. I'm going to click the background layer again. You can change how this clone tool actually works. If you come up to the window menu and you come down to clone source, this will open up a control place where you can actually set all sorts of different things in terms of how your tool actually works. So for instance, you can uncheck the overlay. I'm going to move my image a little bit to the side. This overlay, I'm going to sort of like go around and talk about different parts at the very top. Well, the first one we can talk about is the clone source. So I'm going to go back to turn alignment on. My first source, this one, if you look at, there's 5 little icons that run across the top. Those are all different sources. If you then, for instance, I'm going to set a new sample point. So I'm going to option click up here, and now I've got a new sample point and I can go down. If I go to my second clone source, so click on the second icon, I can do another sample point. In this case, I'm going to actually do something in the white area down near the bottom. I'm going to set that as a sample point, come over and click and pull down. Then if I go back to my first source again and come back over and click and pull down, it's gone back to the original one. And it'll stay there until I click on another source point. So I'm going to click on number 2 and pull that one down, and you can see, or come up at the very top. Does that make sense to everybody what's going on? All right. Back to open to get rid of that. Trickier ones. Let's say that you have got, and this happens a lot. Again, I'm going to click on my background layer. I'm going to set a source point up at the very top. Option click, and I'm going to come over. A lot of times we are doing very precise clone and source and replace. You can't see the dot where I'm actually trying to replace. You can't see the space where I'm trying to replace it because the clone thing is actually covering it. So if you don't want that to happen, you can actually use the opacity slider in the overlay, click and drop it all the way down to 0, and you don't get the preview anymore, so that you can actually line the very center of your destination up with when you bring over the source point outline. So when you click and drag down, it still happens. Some people prefer, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, have this just be a 50%er so that you can see half of it. So now I can actually see through this black part, get my clone stamp aligned, but then when I click and pull down, it actually gives it all to me. So then finally, the last one I want to show you is I want you to turn on the layer that's got the half arc that's sitting up here on the top. So in this case, I'm going to bring my opacity all the way back up to 100%. Interestingly enough, I had my clone source point number 2 selected. If you come over on your image right now and click and drag down, that was the lighter of them. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo it. If you click your number 1 source point and click and drag, you'll actually see that you actually will show the other part of your image. Again, because it was a source point. But instead, what I want to do is, I'm just going to click back here to my very beginning and turn that on. I want to use the clone stamp tool to complete the missing part of the arc. Can you do that? Well, watch what happens. Come over to your clone stamp. We're going to set a source point. So if you imagine this is a clock face, I want to do just the opposite of this. So I'm going to set something around like 1:30 or 2 o'clock. I'm going to hover the little X right over the very center of the arc. So you can see that's what's happening. Hold down the Option key and click, and then I'm going to come over to this area right here, and I'm going to put in the new part. Did that complete the arc? New. Hit Command Z to undo that. You can change the angle of your arc. If you take a look, this is the angle of the clone stamp tool. Up here at the very top, this angle setting that's right here in the middle, if you click on that and you type in 180, that is the exact opposite. Again, a circle has 360 degrees. This is now the exact opposite. And now look what happens. If you hover over your image and you click and you actually do this, the arc is going in the correct way, but you can't really see it. You can't really see it to get it to line up. So this is how you ultimately do it. Command Z to undo this. I'm going to come up to the very top again, and I'm going to select my source point. I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to click on it to select it. Now I'm going to come down here to the bottom, but before I click my destination point, I need to make it large enough. I need to make my brush large enough to be able to see exactly where it will line up on both sides. So use your bracket keys, the closing bracket, 2 over to the right from your P key, to make this considerably larger. And now you can actually work this around till it actually comes into place and lines up with both of the top part of your circle and the bottom, and click once, and you've completed the circle. You hate your neighbors, you hate your friends, you hate the people who live with you, you hate your roommate. Go in and change their clone stamp tool to 180% and close it up. Nobody knows about this dialog box. Nobody will know why their clone is exactly 180 degrees opposite. You will drive them out of their minds. The only way they'll ever be able to fix it is to reset Photoshop. Questions about this? Okay. Let's turn off that layer. You can get rid of the clone stamps. Oh, wait, make sure that you get your clone stamp back to 180. That's what this little icon is. That's the arrow going counterclockwise. If you click on that, it just will reset it to 0. And then you can get rid of this, tear it off, and lose it. Okay, back down to the bottom part. Healing brush tool. So to get to the healing brush tool, the shortcut is the J key. If you click on it, there's a whole bunch of healing brush tools. There's the spot healing brush tool that's at the very top. There's the remove tool underneath it, the healing brush tool. This is the standard. This is the one that was originally built. This is the one we're going to start with. There is also the patch tool. We're going to look at all 4 of these today, but I want you to start with the regular healing brush tool, not the spot, but the regular one. Click on that. And then again, come over to the gradient side. I'm going to make this tool a little bit larger. So, and this also has the very same settings. You can click and do the hardness. I'm going to set my hardness to 100%. A normal blending mode. In this case, we don't have flow and we don't have opacity. We're going to leave it as sampled. We're not going to do pattern. We will leave it as aligned. We don't need to use the legacy part, but in the drop-down menu, current and below, in our case, we want to set it to current layer. We don't have any layers below us, so we don't need to worry about that part. So the way this tool works is different than the clone stamp tool. This is a 2-step tool, and these 2 steps are critical for you to understand how it works. So remember I said you need to remember the difference? This is the difference right now. The clone stamp tool is pretty obvious. It's pixel for pixel replacement. But what happens with the healing brush tool is 2 things. The first step is that it takes, again, you set it the same way. You set the source and then you go to a destination. It sets the source that you set, it copies that texture and it goes over, and in your destination, it applies the texture from your source. And then the minute you go actually let go of it, and so you do your stroke with it, whatever, the texture's replaced. But then what it does, a second step, is it looks at all of the tone and color that are surrounding that new texture, and it tries to blend in all of that color and tone. It tries to keep the new texture, but it tries to blend the tone and the color that surround that so it does not look like some obvious patch. So let's see how that actually works. I'm going to hover over the gradient at the very top. We're going to do the very same steps. Hover over the gradient at the very top. You do the same trick. You hold down the Option key. That sets the source point. When I come over to here, it looks like the same thing is going to happen. I'm going to click and I'm going to draw down and let go. And nothing happened. Did it? How many people think nothing happened? You're all who are holding up your hand wrong. What happened was it replaced the texture. Both sides have the exact same texture. This is a synthetic file. That was his first move. It replaced the texture. Second move is it looked at all the color around it and tried to blend in the color around the new texture. And the color's identical. It did both of its jobs. It just doesn't appear like anything to you. Yes?
I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it gets glitched. I still got the shadow there.
Go back to your, go all the way back up and just see what it looks like. Well, no, reset, go up the very top. This actually, Elaine's looking like her. It's almost still doing the same clone stamp work, and it's not. Did anybody else get anything? No, right? Okay, that's the long and the short of it is you can close this thing up, and we're actually going to start your homework.
Oh, I changed it to use legacy instead of what you did.
You did what?
I changed it to use legacy.
Oh,
That was the problem. It wasn't using the legacy.
I'm not using the legacy.
I don't know why, but it actually looks like what you did when I changed it to
Yeah,
use legacy.
yeah. Adobe strikes again. Okay, so to start your homework, we're going to take a different road here for a little bit, and then we're going to come back to actually this stuff. So in your session number 6, in your session folder, inside the assignment folder, there's a thing called Skin Eyes Retouch. I need you to open this file up. Double click the hand to get it all the way open, and then hang on 1 second. There's a file that I need to open that you guys don't have, so give me just 1 second to get there. Does this appear to have dimension? I mean, it's an illustration. I get that. It's a two-dimensional screen, so clearly it's not sticking out of the screen. But does that have the appearance of dimension? Okay, who's not sure about this? It appears to, right? It looks like it's a globe kind of thing. It's rounded, right? Why? Again, I have highlights and shadows both. You need both, right? Even because if you had shadows and no highlights, it would simply be black. If you had highlights and the shadows, it would simply be white. You need both of these. It gives you that illusion. Does this have the appearance? No. Why? I'm going to clip this to this other one just so that they're both circles. Hang on 1 second. Oh, sorry. So, yes, dimension, no. Why? Why does this not have dimension? Now I know you're saying to yourself, we just fucking told you shadows and highlights. Don't be an idiot. Yet, when we get into doing this kind of retouching, people blank on this all the time and forget what they're trying to do. And it's like, well, okay, remember when you told me I was an idiot because I showed you something this simple? So, I know that there's a couple of fashion people in this class, maybe a couple of beauty people in this class. How many people are in this class in part because they want to learn how to really, truly retouch skin? Quite a few. It's always that way, right? Skin is one of the most challenging things that there is to do. So, I'm going to throw this out to you right now. There's good news and there's bad news in all of this. The good news is I'm going to teach you how to do the highest end retouching that there is right now, today. The bad news is we're starting with the most difficult part of it all, or the most time consuming part of it all. But if you were to say to somebody, okay, I've got this, I've got a photograph of Sabrina Carpenter. She's now the new L'Oreal girl or the new whatever, and they're new in their new beauty makeup line, whatever. The retoucher that they will take that to is going to do the kind of retouching I'm going to show you today. Some people love this. Some people hate this. I'm beginning to throw this out to you. So I want to pose a question to you first, just because I've already set it up. So I come to any one of you and I say, I've got 5 full-length fashion images, and I want you to just retouch the skin. It's 5 full-length fashion images. I got $100. Would you do it? No? 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 Would anyone in this room do it? You and me. I would do it too, right? If you, wait a second, let me ask you this. If you can knock those 5 images out in 10 minutes, you wouldn't do it? $100 for 10 minutes of work?
Well, no.
That's $600 an hour. You're making, who in this room is making more than $600 an hour?
No.
I love that.
No.
I want to come work for you. I'll do it for half the rate. You have got, so, this is a bigger issue we got to get into right now. Somebody comes to you and asks you to do a retouching job. How do you price that job out? How do you figure out what to charge? Most of you would do it based on time, right? Well, it's going to take me an hour. It's going to take me 2 hours. It's going to take me 2 days. Isn't that how you would do it?
No.
Likely? If you're smart, no. But again, if you are of that mind, if you're saying, yes, I'm going to base this on time, I encourage you to go out and find the oldest, slowest computer that you can lay your hands on. You don't even have to have the recent version of Photoshop. Find something that's Photoshop that was still in color, but nothing more than that, right? Find something from the, I don't know, the mid-'80s, maybe, something like something that is cripplingly slow, because it will take you so long to do your retouching, you will make more money because you're doing your retouching based on time. Nobody charges that way. Don't think, you need to stop thinking about time and start thinking about money. So, I'm going to go back to exactly the one I just said, right? 5 images, $100. If you can do that in 10 minutes, you're telling me no, you wouldn't do that for $100? 10 minutes of work? Is that insane?
No.
Better yet, you say to me, oh, okay, that Verser, he's got money, I can tell, look at the way he dresses. I'm going to hit him up for $1,000 an image, see if he'll take it. And I do. So it's like $6,000. You're figuring, yeah, you convinced me that you're going to spend a day on each image, right? And so, no, $5,000. There's 5 images, right? $5,000. That's what I'm going to do it for, right? And I say, okay, great. And then you go home and you don't take 5 days to do it. You take 10 minutes, and you just made $5,000 for 10 minutes. You laugh at this shit. How do you think the big boys really do this stuff? People, you are being raped when it comes to the way people deal with money and you. You think Donald Trump is not doing this to he is not fucking over every possible person he can be fucking over for the money? He's coming out with, oh my God, don't get me started. I'm not meaning to go into politics here. If you're a supporter of our president, that's fine. I'm not here to discourage that or talk you out of it, any of that kind of stuff. I'm merely saying he understands money. And you guys need to do the same thing. And money's never been tied to time. Not unless you are punching a clock. And if that's your ambition in life, fine. It was never mine. I wanted to make a whole lot of money, not punching a clock. Anyway, so with that all being said, there are different levels of retouching. There is the one that I just proposed to you. Will you do 5 images for $100? And I said it would take 10 minutes. And yeah, it's full in fashion, right? It's not a beauty shot. You can go in there with clone stamp tool, healing brush tool, smack the shit out of that face in 30 seconds, on to the next. It won't even take you 10 minutes to do it. 5 images, you can do that in 5 minutes. I can, promise you that. Here's your stuff. Wow, that skin looks awfully plastic. Oh yeah, but look at all the, go to Sephora. Looks awfully plastic there too. Who cares? You're right, they look great. It's full in fashion. Give me a break. Give me $100. That's that level. Then there's the really high-end level. So there is the people who do serious advertising makeup. So Prada has come out with a brand new line. Prada has got very deep pockets. Anyway. The people who retouch Prada will spend on a single typical image, they can spend easily a month on one image. It has to be perfect. It has to be flawless. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it becomes too flawless. But at any rate, that kind of retouching is incredibly time consuming. But you maintain the beauty, the true texture of skin. You do nothing to touch the texture of the skin. It takes a really long time. It takes a lot of work to do it. That's what I'm going to show you today. And then finally, because the first thing you already know is just going to whack it with the healing brush tool. I don't really care what it looks like. It's great, fine, here, give me a minute. This, completely different issue. This is a $20,000 makeup job, $30,000 makeup job, $40,000 retouching. That's the kind of money that goes down in here. So that's what we're going to, and then you'll be really happy that I'm going to then spend the entire rest of the semester showing you a way to do the one that's in the middle. And the one that's in the middle takes a whole lot less time than what we're going to do now. It achieves in many ways a very similar result. Not perfect, but a very similar result. But it's infinitely better than going in and just smacking something with a healing brush tool. So keep that in mind, because you are all going to be really angry at me over the course of the next week. Either that, or there are some people who find what I'm going to show you incredibly therapeutic. And if you're that kind of person, then you won't be angry at me. You'll just be happy that you're in therapy. All right. So here we go. So we're going to start on this image right here, and I want everybody to zoom in to the pimple that is on her chin. Yes?
Quick question.
Shoot.
I know that you say that this is like a long process, but isn't there a way where we can save this process to where it's just a one click to do for a next image?
No. No.
So what are, because I know some people, I can't think of their name, but you know how some people are out there and they're like, oh, this is a scare retouch, just one click, and then they have you like buy that and then it applies to your, you know what I'm talking about?
There's all sorts of programs out there that promise all that, and in my case, I don't think any of them deliver on that. No, but I mean, if that's the route that you want to go, and I will say this, AI is actually, as it continues to get better, AI really will be possibly the answer for that, because AI can actually look at an image and analyze it and then decide to do what it's going to do to that in bulk, but it's not there yet.
I mean, it'd be great in action with stops and instructions. That's probably the closest you can get, isn't it?
All of these are possibilities, or you basically just go and smack again. Here, this is what you do. I'm going to do this. Don't do this, and this is not what I'm trying to teach you right now, but J key for the healing brush tool. Make sure it is the spot healing brush tool. I'm going to zip back out here. I'm going to do a source of something that is completely flat. And then I'm just going to run through here. Oops, sorry. Something that is completely flat. And we will unalign it. And then I'm just going to keep doing this. Isn't that lovely? That skin, that's nothing. Oh, I've got another one. Also works really well. Beautiful. That's what that looks like in Sephora. Oh, wait, but Versa, that's so, you can't do that to her eyes. No, you just put on a layer mask and we can bring the eyes back. Oh, yeah, that's so pretty. Oh, and bring the mouth back too. Yes, there we go. Looks great. Oh, how about a couple of nostrils? Let's make this believable. Yep, looks great. Couldn't tell that's retouched at all. Anyway, no. Not unfortunately, I don't think. I mean, I like to think that there's still, you guys have a possibility of actually getting a really good job that pays a lot of money for a while. Anyway, so this is how we're going to actually do this. We're going to do the real thing. So getting back to all seriousness here. So Do this with me right now. If you do this with me right now and you save this work, this is your homework. You're going to get a jump on your homework. So don't just watch, do this. Yes?
I just had a question about like if we discuss like the ethics of retouching.
We do.
Okay.
It's not next week, it's the week after though, I think.
Okay.
Yes. No, and in a big way for this. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do Command J to start right off the bat with. The thing is, we're going to mix two things in here. First thing I'm going to show you here is tonal retouching, and then we are going to have to do some pixel retouching because there's certain things in this image that you cannot do tonally, but tonal retouching is what, again, the really big, high-end, expensive people do, where they really don't want to change any of the texture of the skin that they don't absolutely have to change. Now, you may not believe me, but we are going to remove this pimple off of her face without touching the texture of the skin on this. And that's the goal in all of this. So if we can do that, then that is, again, the ultimate, I think, in retouching. For me, to keep skin looking believable is sort of like the holy grail. And so that's the way I approach this. That's why I greatly dislike the clone stamp tool for doing this kind of work. I greatly dislike the healing brush tool for doing this kind of work, but we'll see the different strategies. We will talk about the ethics of doing this because they are critical. And so anyway, but that's how we're going to go about doing this to begin with. So I'm going to rename this layer that I just made, and I'm going to call it Pixel Retouch. You should do the same thing. And then I'm going to put a special layer on top of this that will do the lion's share of my retouching. Let me move some stuff around here so I've got a little room to work with. Definitely, remember I kept telling you there was going to come the time where you had to have a tablet? Now is the time. So you need to bring out your tablet for sure. Okay. Okay, so the way you build this special layer, just watch me first. I'm going to go through it one time, and then I'll do it again with you guys a second time. So I'm going to add a new layer to this, but I want to set up a very special layer. You can set this all up after the fact, but it's easier to do it at the beginning. So if you hold down your Option key and you click on that little transparent layer thing down at the bottom, so again, the box that's got the plus in it, hold down your Option key and click. It'll open up a dialog box, and this lets you actually set this up to begin with. So I want everybody to hold down their Option key and click on that little plus at the bottom, the little square with the plus in it to add a new layer. And then we're going to actually set this up in a very specific way. So everybody got the little box open? You're going to name this Tonal Retouch. Small. You could also call it detail, but small I think is a better term for this. Then in the drop down mode, click on this. You're going to come down to, or in this case up to, soft light. And then finally you're going to click right under that thing that says mode soft light. You're going to click on fill with neutral color, and you're going to say okay to that. And you should see no change in your image, but you are going to have this thing over here called Tonal Retouch Small, and then it's actually filled with a middle gray. And I'll wait for you to get there. again, in Photoshop, if you already have it open, just go to File, Open Recent. Okay. So the way a soft light layer works is, again, this is this is in the contrast layer group. If you hit your D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white, and then I'm going to zoom in next to this girl's pimple, and again, I'm going to do this with a soft brush. No, let's do this with a completely hard brush. Hard brush, normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and simply make a mark. And what you'll see is, because this is a soft light layer, it respects luminosity, but it actually makes the image part darker. If you then hit the X key and you make white your foreground color and click another place, you'll see it also respects luminosity. It just makes your image lighter. So the advantage of this is that we can dodge and burn on this same layer, which is what we're going to try to do. We are going to dodge and burn the tonality of that pimple to eliminate it. So right now, if you want to see what's going on this layer, hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball of just the layer. This is what the layer looks like by itself. So what you can see is happening here is that any place on this layer that is an exact 50% gray, this is true of all of the contrast layers. So if we talk about contrast layers, it is the overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid, linear light, pin light, hard, all of those. Wherever it's 50% gray, you see nothing. It has no impact on your image. Then darker has an impact in one direction, lighter has an impact on another direction. If we want to get rid of this, I don't want to see these things anymore, I'm going to turn everybody else back on so you can see the whole image. Make sure that your tonal small layer is selected. You can actually fill this image up to the Edit menu, down to Fill, and then in the content, you're going to click on that drop-down menu and say 50% gray. So again, this is where I am, Edit menu, Fill. In the dialog that opens up, click your drop down, go down to 50% gray. Blending mode, 100% normal, opacity 100%, click OK, and those things will go away. Then again, if you hold on your Option key and click and look at it, you'll see the reason they are gone is because you filled it with 50% gray. So this is something important to remember, that if for some reason you go too far or you make a mistake in your tonal retouching, actually, you can then sample a 50% gray, or you can make one. You can go into your foreground color picker. You can type in 128, tab key 128, tab key 128. That is now a middle gray, and you can paint with that, and it will undo your tonal work. But in my case, I'm going to hit the D key to default it back to my foreground and background color. The problem that we have with this, though, is, again, I'm going to paint them again, is that in the contrast layers, the overlay, the soft light layer, that all that kind of stuff, they do make luminosity darker and lighter. You can see that right here. But they also impact the color that's underneath. And the problem that you have doing this work with either black or white is that they then will desaturate the color of your skin, because they mix. It's not only do they make them darker or lighter, they actually add some of their color. And in this case, black and white have no color. So the net effect of that is it desaturates the area that you're trying to make lighter and darker. So we do not use black and white to do this work on skin or on anything else. I mean, you can do this on bricks, you can do this on grass, you can do this on the sky, you can do this on anything. Whatever you're doing it on, you would want to source your dodging and burning colors from whatever your subject matter is. In our case, our subject matter here is skin. So what I want to do is I want to create a burning color for skin and a dodging color for skin, not black and white. So I am going to go back to getting rid of all of that. So to build my dodging and burning colors, the first thing you do is actually just click on the foreground color picker. So click on it, it'll open up. In this case, if you hover over anything, it will actually pick the color. So I'm going to say when you're looking at skin, the thing you want to do is you want a neutral color of skin. When you're doing a lot of beauty work, you need to be concerned about areas that have a lot of makeup on them. So for instance, if there's a lot of blush or a lot of rouge or eyeshadow or colored powder or any of that kind of stuff, whatever, you want to avoid those. You want to be something that's close to the skin color. So I'm simply going to tap an area of her skin right down here. I'm going to simply click on it, and it will load that color for me. However, this color is not light enough. What I do have in here though is I've got a hue of 23. You should actually have something kind of pretty close to that. But now I can adjust this to keep the correct color, but to make it considerably lighter and something that I can use. So to do that, once I've got my color picked, I'm going to click on the radio button next to the B to get brightness, and I'm going to crank my brightness up to the low 90s. So I'm going to get up somewhere 91, 92, 93, somewhere in there. You don't want to go to 100 because when you go to 100, you run the risk of this almost hitting white, in which case you'll run into the same problem as using white. The next thing that I have a problem with, because this is my preview color that's sitting right up here in my color picker, is I know it's still also too saturated. So click on the S button for saturation and drag it down. Now, if you go all the way down, you'll get a color of gray. That's not going to help you. You need to have it still have some color in it. So I typically will bring my saturation in somewhere in the low teens. Does this make sense, everybody, what I just did? And say okay. That is now going to be my dodging color. I need a burning color as well, so I'm going to click on my background color picker. You don't need to flip them, just click, sneak in there behind it, click on the background color. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click roughly in the same spot. Again, in this case, I pulled my thing. I've got a hue of 21. It's close enough. I'm going to leave the saturation where it is right now at 33, and I'm going to simply click on the brightness radio button and drag this down. And now again, you don't want to go so far down that you actually lose all of the color. You want to keep it kind of really on the dark side though. So for me, in my case right now, I've actually got a brightness in the mid-teens. So somewhere 15 to 20, so in that range right in there, you kind of want to be in there. However, in this case, I actually do want to bump the saturation up a little bit. I'm getting so dark, I'm really worried that I'm losing all sense of color. So I'm going to grab the saturation and I'm going to pop that up, so probably somewhere in the mid 40s. And guys, I'm eyeballing this. That seems a little too strong for me, so let me pop that back down. So anyway, that's basically how I set my foreground and background burning colors. Then I'm going to zoom in on this. You don't want to work too tight on these things. If you work too tight on it, it will take you too long. I'm at 400% right now, which is a really easy way to get to this. But the problem that I got is I will spend so much time working on this where I would never see that in the bigger overall image. So I'm actually going to drop it down probably closer to a 300%. Yeah, and I'm feeling better about that. Then for my brush setup, you want your brush to be completely soft, so a 0% hardness on your brush, normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and then you need to make your brush about the size. I'm going to make mine the size of the head of that pimple. So I'm going to start, if you want the same size as I've got a 15 pixel size. Now, right now, my foreground color is my dodging color. I need my burning color. I need that head of the pimple, that white thing, to be slightly darker. So I'm going to hit the X key to actually get my burning color. So when I do tonal retouching, my left hand stays on the X key of the keyboard. My right hand does the tapping. So this is what I need everybody to look at me. You'll hear this on the video, but you won't see it. This is the trick to doing tonal retouching. It is always, I'm going to turn mine upside down so I don't do this all on my screen. It's this all the time. Tap, 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 tap. If I see anybody click and draw a line in here, I swear to God, I'm going to find something heavy and I'm going to throw it at your head as hard as I can. Because you did not listen to me again. What do we do? Tap, 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 tap. Why are you doing that? If you take a look at her skin, look at all of these little dots that are making up the color of her skin. That's how skin works. You need to emulate that. There are no painted lines along here. Nobody's clicking and drawing. Nobody's sitting down there and making little circles and doing that kind of shit. It is tap, 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 tap. You are going to wish, when this is all over, that you had a tattoo needle that you could actually hook up to this thing so that you just had to put it down and go like that, which would be so much easier. And I've said this pretty much since I've taught this class, and I've never made that, but I think I could make an absolute killing in a very small market, right? Retouchers, an automated like little device like this. If you try to do this with a tablet or a mouse, I'm not a tablet, a trackpad or a mouse, your arm is going to go numb in the first 10 minutes. I can promise you that. This takes hours.
Why not use scatter and spacing?
Do what?
Scatter and spacing with the brush.
I don't know. We'll look at scatter and spacing.
Just wondered.
So anyway, that's how I'm going to do. So I'm going to start this. Watch me first, and then you're going to do it. So again, I'm doing this with my burning color first. So again, I'm just tap, tap. Ooh. The most important part that I forgot. You need to drop the opacity of your brush down to 6%. 6% is good for Caucasian skin, but only doing heavy work like this. Once we get into doing even more subtle work in this, you're going to be around a 1%. Now, we can get into flow, but you will do this later. Again, if you first start working with a tablet, yes.
What percentage did you drop? I'm sorry.
I went from 100% down to 6%. My opacity is set at 6%. Okay. So have we talked about the difference in flow and opacity in this class? Yes? No? No one remembers? Anybody know the difference in flow and... Yes?
Opacity is the overall transparency of it. Flow is like the resistance and responsiveness of the brush to your input.
Maybe you're heading in the right direction. Everybody, new file, really quick. Command M. Double click on the hand. Doesn't really matter how big it is. You can leave your dodging and burning colors there. That'll be fine. Hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure that its opacity is 100. Set the opacity at 50%, and then set your flow at 100%. Normal blending mode, and make it a completely hard brush. And then a relatively big brush. And then I want you to just start at the very top of your new synthetic file and just start to drag and go back and forth. But don't ever pick up your cursor. Just keep going back and forth. And you will see at a certain stage of the game, I'm not building density anymore. No matter how much I hit this, I can't build density. What it's actually doing is it's looking at the color of my brush, and it's looking at the color of that background, and it's going, because I've got a 50% opacity, it's going right in the middle of those two. Now I'm going to lift my cursor off of my stylus off of my tablet, and I'm going to hit it again. And the reason it's getting darker now is, again, it's looking at the color that was on my screen already, and it's the color of my foreground as well, and it's going right between the two of those. But again, if I keep going back and forth, this will never get any darker until I lift this off again and hit it again, and now it's going to go halfway between those two, and that's just basically how it works. So then if you crank your opacity all the way up to 100 and then take your flow down to let's go down to like 25% and come underneath this and then start to scrub back and forth, you'll see you build density shockingly fast. So this is why most people who work with flow are doing it in a percentage under 10. So I'm going to bring mine down to like an 8 and then do it here. And you can see it allows you to build density in still relatively quickly. There's a lot of times where I'll work with flow at 1%. But the advantage of this is that you don't have to keep lifting your brush up and tapping down again. I strongly suggest you do not use flow when you start your tonal retouching now. Once you've done this for 6 months, then a lot of people will graduate. They will quit using opacity and they will start using flow because it's faster. But if you start out that way, this shit is just going to drive you crazy because it'll all go too fast. So I'm going to bring my flow all the way up. I'm going to drag my opacity down to 6% or 7%, 6%, and then make my brush smaller. Make sure it's a completely soft brush. And then again, tap, 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 tap. Stop. It's not perfect yet. hit the X key and go to your dodging and start to do the work around it. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. X key again, a little bit more in the center, dodging. Now I've got overall, I feel like that the gist of it is pretty smooth, but I've still got a whole patch that is darker than everything. So now I'm going to make my brush larger. Again, X key to dodge it back, and slowly taps now. And again, I'm constantly moving my brush around. And then I'm going to double click on the hand. Zoom in a little bit. Pimple be gone. I still see a small little ridge around part of it, so I'm going to zoom back in again on this. B key to get the brush. It's a dodging color. Make it a little bit smaller. Small taps now, not too fast. Double click on the hand. Gone. Turn your preview on and off. That is how the big boys do it, and the big girls. And the big people who are in between, or both. Make sense? So this works out really well. I'm going to ask you, this is what I expect you to do to retouch all of this image, but there are parts of this image that you cannot retouch like that. But before we get to that, I want everybody to come up to the eyeball. So if you look under the eyeball, there's a series of lines that are running underneath this girl's eye. I mean, this girl has flawless skin, whatever this, but this is not. Again, we haven't gotten to the conversation about ethics yet. We do that when we get into really body manipulation. I just want you to be aware that what I'm showing you right now is technique. I'm not making this value judgment and saying, oh, those lines that are underneath her eyes make her horrible. What an ugly thing. I can't hardly stand to look at this, whatever. Please, please, please get rid of that. That is not what this is about. This is about techniques to actually show you how you should be dealing with challenges that would fall along these same lines. So at any rate, this could be cracks in cement. It doesn't have to be the lines under her eyes. So at any rate, we're going to fix this part. You remember though when I told you you cannot paint a line here, because that's what you're going to be tempted to do. And the problem with painting a line here is, well, here, we'll try it. So everybody come up under there. Did everybody retouch the pimple yet? Did it work? It did not work. Next time, raise your hand and let me know that. It does come out too orange. So if you're not happy with the way this looks, because again, this is, you just start from scratch. Easiest thing is to up to the F menu, and down to fill, and then 50% gray, say okay, and now we're going to start this again. So your colors, click on your foreground color. It's too dark. It's way too dark here. So saturation is too strong. Drop. You got saturation selected. Go down to like 14. Just straight down, but just on the white part, you're actually hitting everything around it. It's just the white part. You're just trying to make the white part dark.
We'll get there.
Yeah, but again, just the white part, nothing around it. Good, fine, stop. Then hit your X key to go to the lighter color, and then start doing the work around it, especially that dark part right there, go through that. And then up in the middle. Yep. Up there, and around again a little bit more. And then turn your eyeball on. Yes.
Typically just avoid using extra joint paint, it doesn't work completely, but it's saying, I have no way of telling you that.
To an extent.
And that's the word I always use. How can we?
Well, I mean, hold that thought, but I mean, you're getting all of this, right? Yeah, okay. Who else? Guys, who else? Is this working for you guys? No? Okay, get back into Photoshop, get rid of all this. Your screen is shockingly bright and like fogged out. What's up with this?
It's not, the color calibration works.
No, the color calibration here is horrible. You need to undo all of this because this is not right. So you need to go back to your original. I mean, you can't even see this. So no, you need to go back to your settings. And you're gonna go to do a search for display. That's what you're really looking for. Settings, yeah, display settings. And color photo profile. This is set to sRGB. Go back to the Windows one. Well, that look helps a lot. Something is horribly off on there. And then scroll down again a little bit more. Click on advanced display. And we can't do all of this right now, but turn display. Okay, let's go back into Photoshop now at least. Well, yeah, at least it's not completely cleared out. But this is still really, really, really off. Yeah. So anyway, but it doesn't even look like you have a tonal layer here, so I'm not sure what you're working on. Go all the way down to the bottom of your history then, if that's the case. Hold down your option key and click on this eyeball. Yeah, you've got very little going on there. Click on the eyeball again. No, I'm sorry, click on the ones underneath it. Yeah, well, you're in the right spot. We have got to look at this because you can't even work on this. There's no, and that's got to be reset.
Here's a question.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Oh.
I'm just not seeing a difference when I tend to layer off. It looks like I've done that.
Yeah, it does look you on that thing. So hold down the option key and click on that button again. It says this is now at set an opacity of 3%. Get all the way out. And now you realize you went too far. Yeah, sorry. Okay, up by the eye, underneath the eye. So again, in this case, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. I am going to go back to my B key of the brush, but in this case, you need to make the brush really small, about the size of this line. The problem is that if you try to paint this, what ends up happening is that as you're lightening it, what ends up happening is that your brush is going to spill on the edges on the outside of that. And it'll fix the line that's in the middle, but then it will be surrounded by two really light lines on both sides, and there's no way to avoid that. You cannot paint, you can only tap. So I'm gonna make my brush smaller, and I'm gonna come into this part. Again, I've got my dodging color that's on here, and you just start tapping and you run your way up and down, and you just keep it up. Now, in this case, it's a little bit darker of a line in here. I don't want you to go wild on this part, but if you get really frustrated with how long it takes, Bump your opacity up. Don't go up above a 10, but I could bump mine up to like a 9. That's a 50% increase in the amount of ink I'm laying down. And it feels like it's a little bit more responsive to me, but don't make this work just quick, because if you do, you will ultimately have to do it over. And again, doing something right once, I'd rather take an hour to do it right once than spend another 3 hours trying to fix it. So and keep it moving. Don't stay in one place. All right, and now watch my screen. I'm going to turn this on and off, and you can see I've gotten rid of those lines, but this is what these lines look like. Again, look at my screen. This is nothing but a series of these dots. If you do lines like this, you will spot it a million miles away. It's got to be just these little bitty dots. That's what makes up all of this kind of retouching. So again, don't cheat on that part. That's how you would actually take care of that. So a couple of things else that we've got to get through relatively quickly. There are things that cannot be retouched tonally. So if you take a look right underneath her eye, there is a really bright dot right here. I want everybody to find that really bright dot, and I want you to burn that dot in. So again, X key to get to my burning color. I'm going to make my brush slightly larger, and then, not that large, and then I'm just going to start tapping. And keep tapping, and keep tapping, and keep tapping. And no matter what you do, all you end up doing is creating a bullseye around this thing. The reason you cannot burn that in is there is nothing there to burn in. That is a white dot. There's no burning in this. And so you end up with this circle. If you hold down your Option key and you click on it, you will see you got this just black dot with that white circle around it. That will not work. So to fix this, hit your L key to get the lasso tool and circle this black dot that you just made up to your edit menu, down to fill, and fill it with 50% gray. Command D to deselect. Now you can fix it the correct way. The correct way to fix this thing is to actually do it on your pixel retouch layer. So we are now dropping down to the layer underneath it, the pixel retouch layer. And in this case, we have got to use which of two tools? Clone stamp tool or the healing brush tool? I'm worried about putting something on here that's not going to match the surrounding area in color and tone. What tool do I use? Clone stamp tool will give me 100% direct, dot to dot in here, pixel to pixel. That's not what I want. Healing brush tool is what you want to use. The J key. Do not pick the default on this, which is the spot healing brush tool. Pick the regular healing brush tool, because you get to pick then where the source is. Make the tool much smaller, but you remember I've been preaching against using this tool for like ever. So what I really want to do is show you how to use the tool to do the least amount of damage to the real skin. You don't want to change anything in here that doesn't need to be fixed. And if I just use this tool the way it's set up right now, that's not going to happen. I'm going to change other things in here that I do not want to change. So to restrict this, would you, when you look at this little white dot, would you say this little white dot is lighter or darker than the background? I can't throw an easier question to you. It's lighter. So to fix it, I need to make it darker. So I can use blending modes with the healing brush tool to change only the area that needs to be made darker. So this is how you do it. With the healing brush tool selected, again, the one where you pick it, change your blending mode of the brush from normal. I want to show you how this tool really works. So just change yours right now from normal to lighten. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to do this on our eyeball first. So hover over the dark part of her eyeball and hold down your Option key and click a spot right there, and then come over the part of her eye and paint. And you'll see you get no change because I've set the mode to actually make it lighter. Well, it's already lighter than the black place that I picked. So instead, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that just in case. Change your blending mode to darken. and do the same thing. Hover over that black part of her eye, click, come up, and actually paint it over. And you can see it will paint over. Again, it's incredibly light now because it's replacing texture, but it's also looking at the surrounding area, which is dark, and it's trying to blend this in. Again, it's not the clone stamp tool. Command Z to undo that. In our case, we want to make this thing darker, so when you pick things, a spot to actually do this, you want something that's close to this area so that it blends the same area, so it blends that same color and texture. So I'm going to just start a little bit below it, hold down my Option key, click, and come up and just go over that spot. So it fixed the white dot, but it didn't do anything to the area around the white dot because my blending mode said, if it's not lighter or darker, don't do anything. Make sense? This is how you do this kind of work. So there's a number of places on here that you actually need to do this with. This would be another one right up here. So you can zip through these pretty quickly. So big note here. People, whenever they do this retouching, they actually come in and knock all of these little catch lights out of the eyes. What happens when you do that? We're getting ready to go into Halloween. Anybody here dressing up? Oh, me too. I love Halloween. It's one of my favorite holidays. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, I love a long shot. Anyway, if you want to look dead, get rid of the catch lights in your eyes. You remove the moistures in your eyes when you do that. So if you want this person to look dead after you're retouching, remove all those catch lights. My suggestion is don't, because I'll ding you for it, but nonetheless. So there are other places that are on here. There's also other places that are too dark to actually do this with. So if you look around here, it's none of these spots into here. We'll get to the cigarette burn on her cheek in just a second. But this is how I would retouch. I'm going to go back up to doing tonal retouching. I'm going to click on this. I got one finger on the X key. I've got my darken color is to begin with. I typically start with the lighten color. That's just how I do it. So watch my screen. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm only going to spend a minute or two doing this just to give you some idea of the way I think will work best for you. My brush is about the right size for this, except that it's not a brush. I'm still on the healing brush tool, 6%, something like that. Okay, so here we go. So I'm just going to start in here, and I just start tapping really quickly, and I move fast. Don't feel like you need to get it all the way done. You just need to start getting it closer, because you will come back and visit those areas. And I keep doing this, and then I get kind of bored doing this, so I'll hit the X key, which immediately takes me to my burn tool, and I start to work on my burn tool stuff around in the same area right in here. X key to go back to my lighten tool. And then you say, well, Jesus, that doesn't look like you did anything. This is what I did. Look at how much smoother that skin is already getting. Yes? Because that's how you tonally retouch this. The entire skin, with few exceptions, needs to be softened tonally. Make sense? Yeah, I know, it sucks. Wait till you see that. I'm going to show you the maps of how people have done this well. Okay, really quickly, two things we've got to get to. You need to make a second copy of your tonal retouching layer. So when you make a second copy, we're going to do the same thing. So hold down your Option key and click on the little square at the bottom with the plus in the middle. We're going to call this Tonal Retouch Large. And you're going to set it up the same way. Soft light blending mode. Fill with neutral color. Say okay to that. It makes another version of this. There are larger areas of her skin that actually need to have tonal retouching as well. Like you could look at the area underneath her eyes. It doesn't need to be eliminated, but it definitely needs to be lifted. It needs to be softened. So I'm going to go to a much B key, to a much larger brush. I'm also going to look at this area right here, like where it's, you know, what would be a mustache area. So again, I just want to lighten this a little bit. So I'm just going to run along this part right in here to lighten this part up. I'm actually going to do the same thing right underneath her eyes. I'm not going to take this all the way, but I will lighten this up a little bit like this. just to soften that up. And you can see, this is what I'm doing now to actually lift this. The reason that you don't want to do this on the same layer is if you take a look at your small detail right here, your small detail is going to take hours. Your large stuff is going to go really fast. If you fuck the large part up on your small layer, you have to redo your entire small layer and you will hate your life. Keep these on separate layers so that, again, your small detail that took forever to do is sacred. Do not do that large retouching on that part. Are we good on this part? Okay. I want to show you really quickly what these maps look like. You have a reference. So if you actually take a look in your Session 6 folder, in the assignment folder, there's a tonal retouch reference. There's two of them. There's one of them right here. Look at this. This is what that tonal retouching map looks like just for the small detail stuff. I'm going to open this up so you can see it. Actually, I'm opening them both up. You can't do this kind of work in 15 minutes. This is the tonal retouch detail small one. This is actually the large one. In the large one, what you're trying to do, it's the same thing as when people wear foundation, is that you're trying to smooth the blotchiness of the skin out. You're not really trying to lift stuff or push stuff down. You're just trying to smooth things out. So if you look at skin tones, there's a lot of variation in color, and not in color and tone, a lot. And if you can blend those out, it will completely change the nature of your image. So I'm going to show you an example of one of these that's really well done, and then we got to get rid of the cigarette burn really fast. So hang tight. Flawless skin, right? This is her retouching small. That's what it looks like. This is what it looks like on and off. If you look at this, you will never be able to convince anybody in the world you can do this with a clone stamp tool or healing brush tool. You cannot. This is what her large layer's like. This is what this does. Questions about this? Yes.
Is there going to be a reference photo to what it should look like?
There's no, but there's two of these maps. One that looks like this, and one that looks like that in your assignment folder. Yes.
This is what I was trying. Okay, so I can just change all of my settings, and I can even do the HD.
Oh, no, I understand that, but
Why not?
because what control do you have?
I mean, you can switch back and forth between two brushes.
Try it, let's see how it works.
I mean, if you're just trying to restore depth of texture.
I know, I am not trying to restore, no, because that's random.
I know,
That's
it's
just like
just
saying I
soft.
want to throw in texture. This is like trying to literally change the tonality of a pore.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, you could, with smaller ones, though, like scribbling it in wouldn't be like counteracting some of the.
Try it, let's see.
Okay.
No, I'll love to look at it. Again, I'm more than happy to, if I could shorten this, I would. But anyway, questions about this part so far? Okay, last thing, the cigarette burn. So if we go, turn your image back on, all the way back on. I got 2 minutes to do this. We should have enough time to do this. It's this mark that's on the side of her face. I don't know what it was. It looks like it's been tried to be covered up with makeup. This is just a train wreck right here. You can't really do this tonally. That's not going to work on here. We do have to use the sum. So for me, I am actually going to use the healing brush tool. It's a better tool to use. If you try to use clone stamp on this, again, the edges of your clone stamp will not match the surrounding area in color and tone. So we are going to do a quick set of versions of this and see which one we like the best. So again, because I've only got 1 minute left to do this, I'm going to blast through this pretty quick. You can do this with me or just watch. You'll see it on the video. I'm going to start with the spot healing brush tool. The way this tool works is that Photoshop actually picks the source for you. You don't get to pick the source. What I will say about all the cloning stamp tools though is that if you only do half of this image like that, what ends up happening is that it's going to try to take the area you didn't fix and blend it into the area that you did. That is a mistake. You have to do this all at once. You've got to do the whole thing and then let go. And I'm going to name this. Somebody just write this down really quickly. Somebody just make a list for me so I don't have to name these things. Spot healing tool was my first version of this. My second version of this is going to be the remove tool. In the remove tool, you paint over the same area again. This uses AI to do it. So remove tool is second. I'm going to do that as another snapshot and then go back. The third tool to do this on is the healing brush tool. That's where you get to pick the source. So I'm going to make my brush bigger. I'm going to then hold down my option key and set a source down here below. Come up and run over all of that. And then do a snapshot of that. So healing brush was the next one. Command Z to undo that. And then finally, the last one is the patch tool. In the patch tool, it's the only tool that works the other way around. In the patch tool, you do not pick the source first. You pick the destination. So you circle this area. It gives you the lasso tool. And then you'll see it gives you this strange little icon with arrows pointing out. You then click and drag this to a source. Now you'll see that the tone of the patch is much darker. It doesn't look like this is going to fit. But again, this is the two-step process. This will replace the texture, and then when I let go, it'll blend it in. And so that's the last one. Command D to deselect, and I'm going to snapshot that one. So now you guys tell me which one you think is the best. So the first one, spot healing brush, looks like that. I can spot that circle a mile away. Second one was the remove tool. That one actually works pretty good. This is a new one, relatively new speaking, AI. Third one is the normal healing brush tool. I still see most of that, horrible. And then fourth, the patch tool. For my money, it's between the patch tool and the remove tool. I actually like the remove tool better. Brings in a little bit more character. That's it. So when you do this, the assignments is going to also ask you to fix this hair, the opening in the hair here. We've not gone over that. Don't bother with that. Oh, I take it back. We did go over that. Remember when we fixed Sunny's hair? So the assignment does call for you to fill in this hair, but you now know how to do that. Because again, we did that for Sunny last week. Questions about any of this? It's not just this area of her cheek. You need to look up on her forehead. You need to look on the other cheek, her chin. Yes?
What do you mean by filling her hair?
See that big hunk of hair, missing hair right here on her forehead? You need to get rid of it.
Why were you working on this layer instead of the tonal retouch layer?
I'm sorry?
Why were you working on the pixel retouch layer instead of the tonal retouch layer?
Because this is all pixel work.
Okay.
We're literally replacing the pixels. You would not be able to do that. If you went to a tonal layer, look, it's really weird. This is what happens. So if we did like the patch tool and pull it over, you're not going to notice anything because this layer is basically all the same. Yes? It's the same thing as the small. You're using that same dodging and burning color. If you've got a shadow under her eye, you need to, dodge that back so it's not so dark. If you've got, the highlight that's on her chin, the general big highlight that's on her chin, this area right here, you would want to burn that down a little bit. So it's still dodging and burning. It's just on a bigger scale. But you don't want to mix them because, try to imagine this, that you've done. You've done all of this work on this layer right here, and then you go in and you say, well, that area underneath her eye, I need to make that lighter, and you overshoot it. There's no way to get rid of it. You have to do all of this all over again, and no one wants to do this again. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, guys? All right. I think I'm staying after to work with some people. Dustin, you and I are on later, and actually also you, Allie. Okay. I mean, Will.